Wow. Just simply wow. What a day. Just a good time to be alive. Is there nothing like October in terms of a sports fan? We're going to start things before we go Niners, before we get into the first weekend of college football in October, before we talk about what's going on in Major League Baseball. Gosh, Giants, you got to get back to the postseason. Nothing more thrilling. Dan Devone alongside Evan Giddings for the next 3 hours, but we start things at the crack of dawn. It must have been pitch black when my boy was rolling out of bed and headed where? You take it from there. What's going on with you this morning?
First of all, Devone, I'm working on my 17th cup of coffee at this point. I woke up, had my first one, all black pour about 4:15 a.m., had to take the dog out right before I moseyed on over to the great city of Berkeley, California. Well, right below Memorial Coliseum at the Glade, the Memorial Glade, College Game Day was on absolute fire. I know it's wrapping up right now. Marshawn Lynch is making his pick as we speak. The great California Golden Bear that he is. However, I just got to give a shout out to the entire fan base and really the alumni network. Everyone, even on the Miami side, all college football fans showed out in Berkeley today. And from really about 11 p.m. last night when they stormed the gates, they broke down the barricades multiple times. There are kids that are passed out right now all across the Berkeley campus, whether they're catching a nap, whether they're catching their second wind, whether they're puking and rallying. Everyone right now in the city of Berkeley is revving things up because College Game Day came, they conquered, and they were absolutely fantastic. So my hat's off to everybody there. I was there at 5 a.m. People were rolling out of bed, lazy-eyed or bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I don't know what they were on. I don't know what they were smoking. I don't know what they were drinking, but everyone was having a fantastic time. It was a great event.
So I was a little skeptical. When I hear Game Day coming to Berkeley, I'm glad they represented because there's a part of me that's thinking, this isn't the SEC. This isn't the Big 12. Football doesn't necessarily...
Oh, it's the ACC now.
Oh, it's the ACC.
It's the ACC home opener for California.
I get it, but there's a sense of reservation that they're not going to show out like they do around the rest of the country. This is Berkeley. It's an academic institution, but you're telling me, they just went hard and represented.
Yeah, woke over Coke is the motto of today for California. No, look, everyone showed out, man, and it was a fantastic time, and I was a little bit skeptical too because I was curious as to, like, Cal has had, let's be honest, Cal has had better teams, right? Cal has had the likes of Marshawn Lynch. Aaron Rodgers was on a top 4 team that was a field goal kick away from maybe heading to the Rose Bowl. They've had fantastic teams throughout the 70s, the 80s. You go all the way back to the big game. They've won national championships even dating back to the 50s. This is a storied program, but they have never once hosted College Game Day. And I think they're now one of 5, or were one of 5 power, now 4 programs, but power conferences who have never hosted Game Day before. And I think a little bit had to do with Miami coming in, a lot of juice with the U. I think ushering in the ACC, also, of course, televised on ESPN, had a little bit to do with it. But from what I saw, after the Auburn win on the road, there was a flood of this kind of California Golden Bear social media, just an avalanche of Calgorithm is what they're calling it. So Calgorithm swept social media. They got on the map. And they were able to draw one of the most nationally well-known shows in college sports, and all of sports, quite frankly, to Berkeley. And so I was glad to see that people showed up and showed out, and that College Game Day was rewarded by its choice to come to Memorial.
So there are 10-point dogs to the University of Miami. The football game going off today. Of course, if you don't know, Cal now part of the ACC. If you're wondering why Miami is coming to town, that'll kick off this evening in front of the nationally televised audience. I think McAfee just made his pick, but really quick, take me back. So you said that the gates opened at 11 o'clock last night?
No. They weren't supposed to open at 11 o'clock last night, but just like the gates of Troy, they opened from within. All right, these I don't know if it was college students. I don't know if it was a couple homeless people. I don't know who, but somebody broke down the barricades last night as just a waterfall of navy blue and gold started flooding into the Glade. And eventually it kind of filtered out. And then there was the second wave that came in at approximately 3 a.m. And then I was more with the third wave, maybe some of the elder crowd. Instead of Irish coffee, it was just black coffee. That's what we were drinking, rolling in there, and just having a caffeinated time and enjoying the vibes. The band was out there playing. I tried to sneak into the VIP section with the cheerleaders, but they wouldn't let me in. They ended up catching me. So I tried to go a little bit undercover, but now I'm here with you, Dan, and I cannot wait to rock over the next 3 hours.
Yeah, you are going. I mean, usually you just sort of like ease your way into the day. Kind of like, when I get into the bay, I just start ankle deep, and then eventually I start getting into a swim. But it's usually after I'm lathered a bit. And that's how typically I find my partner, Ev, when we do Saturday mornings. I walked in today and it was just, let's go! Let's go! So tell me about Pat McAfee has become a star at ESPN. And he is, if you watch Game Day, he certainly is a guy that's front and center. And that pretty much held true this morning? Is that what you're telling me?
Pat McAfee, look, I know he's an acquired taste for a lot of people, and his show is pretty interesting. It's definitely moving, I would say, sports media and especially the studio shows into a new sort of medium. But as a college game day host, as an entertainer, as a performer, as a narrator of live entertainment, Pat McAfee is unmatched. I mean, seriously, like Nick Saban, maybe the greatest all-time college head coach, move over. The guy was a mute compared to Pat McAfee. Desmond Howard has been on the show for a long time. Move over. Kirk Herbstreit, sorry, I love your X's and O's breakdown. Move over. Lee Corso was unfortunately unable to make it because he was ill, but Pat McAfee took over the Glade right from the get-go. Whether it was throwing Stanford Steve under the bus in front of the home crowd, whether it was egging on everyone with, roll on Bear chants, Bear territory songs and medleys. He was out last night.
You know it.
At the Asian Getta. He was out last night at Blondie's. He was patrolling the streets on Telegraph, walking over a skunk. I don't know what he was doing last night, but Pat McAfee came with the kind of energy that I hope to come with for the next 3 hours because he was unbelievable.
Don't die on me by 10 o'clock, my man. Just save some of this.
Blondie's, what are you talking about? I'm going back to Berkeley for the game tonight.
Right, that's right. Blondie's might be the best pizza slice, I think, going out in Cal. For those of you, by the way, that happen to be watching Game Day, McAfee just made his pick, and I'd like to know who it is. Of course, we can't watch the program as it happens. But
Marshawn Lynch, we do know, is picking the hometown team.
Marshawn Lynch,
of
course,
got the Bears.
The pride of Oakland, went to the University of California, I believe, played with Aaron Rodgers.
He was a freshman when Rodgers was a senior.
Yes, yeah. J.J. Arrington was in that backfield. Very, very talented team back in the day, and the University of California trying to carry that tradition as Wilcox and company. One quick slam on Cal, though. So I happened to watch that game against Florida State.
Well, that was a real barn burner,
Well, yeah, it's just, they didn't get into the end zone. But this whole idea of what Chip Kelly did in revolutionizing the sport was more than 10 years ago. And I think teams have got to move on. Cal isn't, if you watch them tonight, they get into this hurry up. And everybody actually in college football, it's interesting because college football actually set the standard, where the NFL was trying to play catch-up.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Bill Belichick, that iconic move, actually caught a flight from Boston and he went all the way to Eugene, Oregon to pick the brain of Chip Kelly? Here's Bill Belichick going to the University of Oregon saying, tell me what it is that you're doing here. I want to learn the secret sauce, because they were so innovative. But now suddenly it's almost as if they're sort of stuck in their way, and teams are still playing with their hair on fire, going 100 miles an hour. And as I watch Cal make penalty after penalty and illegal procedure after illegal procedure, I'm like, just get in a huddle. All right, just calm down. Get in a huddle. Let's find out what it is that we're doing, and let's work on execution.
I'm just surprised we've gone 10 minutes talking about Cal, and you haven't brought up your boy from Miami, El Cubano, Vincent Mendoza.
Carlos Mendoza, that's right. He is I believe is a Yale transfer, I want to say.
So he also went to the same high school, I learned this morning, as Mario Cristobal, the head coach of the University of Miami, who, by the way, if we're talking about home field advantage, dude, they made Cristobal do the interview at like 6:45 in the morning. It was still dark when he graced the television. And as energetic as he was, I just had, like, Wilcox didn't show up, I think, until 8:15, so he got to sleep in another hour. But they made the opposing head coach already had to travel 5,000 miles, wake up a little bit earlier. I mean, come on.
Sleep when you're dead, man. But that's such promotion for the university. There's nothing. First of all, coaches, seriously, they don't sleep this time of the year. And secondly, there's no way. That could have been at 4:30 in the morning. and he's going to do that interview just simply because of the exposure. By the way, just starting at 4 o'clock, what the hell was your dog thinking? Because typically, what time are you walking the dog?
He usually gets up around 6, so he's a little bit early.
So was he just freaked out? Like, what's going on?
Well, I mean, I had to basically drag him outside. It's usually the other way around. Like he wakes me up at 6, kind of rakes me across the face with those mean right-handed paw, and then I drag him outside. But today it was, all right, buddy, we got to go.
What kind of dog are we talking about here?
We're talking about a little spaniel mix. He's a Springer and a Cocker mix.
I like it.
A Sprocker.
I like that. Both good breeds. I thought anything smaller than that, I'm like, come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, he's about 32 pounds.
No, that works. You get in just under the wire.
I've been trying to get him on the program.
No, that's good stuff. So you're going to try and roll on through the whole day.
No. I will roll on through the entire day. I'm wired today. So after this show, I'm going to walk down, get my lift in, right? And then I'll drive home, walk the dog
lift,
again.
Not as in you're taking your transportation home. Lift is in you're throwing up the weights.
Yes. I'm going to get to the gym. Heavy leg day for your boy. So squats and deadlifts. And just like Cal's going to be squatting Miami later on today, Memorial Coliseum. And then I'll whip it back home, walk the dog again, feed him, get a little extra portion for being a good boy, and then take Bart on over to downtown Berkeley, and the party begins. Because, look, we got playoff baseball today. And in the meantime, between now and 7:30, the late kick on ESPN, which anyone can watch, between Cal and Miami, we got baseball games pretty much all day beginning at 11 a.m., and then the nightcap, I believe, is the Padres and the Dodgers. And, of course, college football is, just running rampant. I actually was with Matt Steinmetz yesterday, was looking at this line that I love, an early lock of the day.
Oh, here we go.
Tulane minus 18 at UAB because the Dragons are utterly absurd.
What the hell do you know about either one of those teams? Come on.
All I know is they gave up 41 points to Navy, and Navy stinks.
All right. Intervention, Cam. Let's get this man in a room and help him out.
Last week it was the drinking. This week it's the gambling. So pick your poison.
So, but I just want to get back to Cal for a second. I like the excitement. Can they sell out tonight? 63,000 on hand tonight? Are you going to tell me there's 63,000 fans are going to watch that game tonight is it still Memorial Stadium? Assuming it is.
Memorial Coliseum, yeah.
Memorial Coliseum, the retrofit.
I also had my doubts about this because it's one thing to show up to game day at 6 in the morning. Don't get me wrong, that takes commitment. But 13 hours later to then show up to a game that's going to go 3 hours and then keep it rolling after, you might need a nap or two in between then. So I have my doubts about whether it's a sellout, but I can say the tickets are actually a lot more pricey than I believe.
Well, I'm not worried about the student body because the student body,
you should be. There was a couple of them on the lawn this morning.
Well, you know what? You sleep it off, and then you get going again at about 5 o'clock, and then you roll right into the game. The student body they'll be there. I'm worried about, will there be a draw for the fan base? Because college football is something that is obviously just a place where college football goes to die is the Bay Area, basically. When it comes to Stanford and Cal, when you compare it to even other schools of the formerly Pac-12, now, of course, the ACC, when you think about football in the Midwest, and when you think about football certainly out in the SEC where it's a religion, football out here, when it comes to college, there's 14 other things, if not 25 other things that people got to do that are sports fans. So while the student body, I do believe, will be there in numbers, whether they're, sober or not, it's a whole nother question. I'm more concerned about the football fan in these parts. Are there college football fans in the Bay Area? And will you be there tonight? I'm calling you out, San Francisco and the Bay Area. Will you watch Miami and Cal get after it in front of the country?
So a lot of people might not want to hear this, but I actually think there is going to be a turnout because it's Miami. Now, there's a lot of home support. And the fact that game day is here means that all eyes are on Berkeley, and a lot of people have got their tickets ahead of time, and it's a chance to see, Cal and their ACC home opener and all the rest. But the U is a nationwide brand. And I do think, there was a lot of Miami fans early this morning at game day. So I think
Sam Lubin get out of bed.
No, he didn't, surprisingly enough. And Sam, I'm calling you out because what the hell were you?
No doubt.
He considers himself both a Cal and a University of Miami fan.
Well, I could tell you that Sam sort of what influenced this man, because I've read the biography, is that it was a Cal versus the University of Miami football game that he attended, and it was a bowl game played out here where the Giants play, and he decided that that's the influence wasn't on Cal, but it was on Miami, and he decided to pack his bags and head to the East Coast.
Well, I have to imagine it's not all too difficult to get into Coral Gables. It's not exactly a place you need to, I don't know, ace the ACT for. Cal is a great academic institution, and that place is a little more difficult to kind of wade into the waters when we're talking
school. Well, that's what scares me.
Dude, it's in the middle of midterms, and kids were still showing up at 4.
Yeah, good institutions, including Duke, Notre Dame's sort of the outlier, Stanford. They got more important things to do. These guys who are
why do you think we're not doing sports anymore?
Chemical engineering. It's like, come on, man.
There was a kid who, for college game day, they always kick a field goal, right? And if you make the field goal, then you get tuition for, I think it's a full calendar year or something. And the kid missed the first kick, but then the second kick he made, which was for hurricane relief, which was for a great cause, rose, I think it was like $100,000. So clutch kick by young Daniel, a sophomore at Cal. But he's talking to McAfee on air right before, and McAfee asked for his major. And I think it was like, I don't know, nautical engineering. It's something complicated. And McAfee just goes, yeah, so what is that? Kid tried to break it down for him on air, and then he had to stop him because he was going too long. I mean, no one wants to hear you explain your major on national television if it's not economics, communications, or business. All right, so you need something that everyone at least has heard of before if we're going to be talking about school.
When I was a kid growing up, the big game used to mean something. It was always the last game of the year, not the second to last game, not like, towards the end of the season. No, it's the last game of the year, and it would sell out. Like you were talking 75,000 strong. I think Palo Alto and Stanford held more than that, but you knew about it. Even if you weren't at the game, you would just, as a sports fan in these parts, walking around, you would casually say, who won the big game today? Now, I don't even think people give a rip anymore.
No.
And I don't know what happened to it. And that it's still the rivalry. They obviously play for the Axe. My sisters all went to Cal, so I grew up with that rivalry, know all about it. By the way, Santa Clara and St. Mary's is a rivalry. And they play for, I want to say, a bell. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody please call in or give me on the chat. I believe they play for a bell.
I know there's a rivalry between St. Mary's and US 7. Well, there's kind of like an all-encompassing Bay Area rivalry in the WCC,
well, I guess
because you also throw Pacific in there, too. There's really 4 local schools.
You know what? That rivalry probably is no longer because they both got rid of their football programs.
Yeah, the only WCC school I believe that has a football team is San Diego. Shout out Jim Harbaugh.
So just a quick story, because I remember reading about this because it was one of the greatest pranks when it comes to rivalries. And it was, they would play, I want to say, for a bell. And so if you win, if St. Mary's wins, they get to keep this bell, obviously much like that of the Axe. Mm-hmm. And so the week of the game, everybody's trying to steal. From Santa Clara, you would try and steal the bell. And you get creative in ways of trying to do that. Therefore, it is literally on guard by student body or maybe by hired security 24/7 the week of the game. So one year while the bell is at St. Mary's, Santa Clara had a group of guys dressed up as professional cleaners in these white jumpsuits. And so they came in and said, hey, we're here to polish up and clean the bell before the game. And so they gave the bell to him, but there was like this sort of quasi, we're not really certain about this. And they're walking to the door. And these guys from Santa Clara are saying to themselves, we're about 30 feet away from pulling off the biggest caper in the history of rivalries, certainly this rivalry. So while they're pretending to be cleaners, they got the bell, they're wheeling it out. And then all of a sudden comes the athletic director running down the hall saying, hold on. And they're like, oh no. And the athletic director proceeds to open the door for him. Let me get that for you guys. So there you go. So bring back that rivalry, Stanford and Cal. But there's much more going on when it comes to sports in October. There is baseball. I just got to get your thoughts. I know we talk about Pete Alonso. By the way, I'm giggling because I'm listening to sports talk radio locally, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, Pete Alonso should come to the Giants. Yeah, well, if you've listened to us, we've been talking about that for the last 3 months. But let's just talk. I got to know where you were and your thoughts on Alonso going deep. Talk to me about the polar bear. I know you're not a Mets person. You don't like New York, but come on, man.
Oh, first of all, I love the Mets. My uncle lived in Brooklyn for like 40 years, and I texted him after the game, and he is ecstatic. Gave me the entire breakdown of the Phillies-Mets series that's upcoming.
Did you text Jersey Ken, by the way?
No, because I saw him the next day.
Okay, well, come on.
No, actually, I take that back. I think I texted him. I might have had a few. But, Dan, I don't want to talk about it, okay? At least my drinking. So, the Pete Alonso home run, number one. Well, did you see that Devon Williams might have been tipping pitches?
Ooh, didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so there was a slight nod in his glove that aligned with the 5 pitches. If it was a little more horizontal, it was a changeup, which is the pitch he hit the home run on. And if he was vertical,
would you admit that
seam.
might be the most effective pitch right now in baseball?
Devon Williams changeup?
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
It might be the best pitch in the game. Beforehand, Devon Williams hadn't pitched the full season, but statistically, he might have had a better season than Emmanuel Clase or pick your closer, basically. So the fact that Peter Alonso, number one, hit an opposite field home run was impressive. Number two, hit an opposite field home run off of arguably the best pitch in baseball was impressive. Number three, he hit an opposite field home run off the best pitch in baseball on a 3-1 count when no one should be looking for a changeup. Is the holy trinity of what the hell is this guy? This guy's on another planet when it comes to hitting baseballs. So,
well, he hasn't been.
No, he hasn't, but that's one of the most clutch hits probably in the history of the Mets.
I want to say in postseason, I mean, that's Travis Ishikawa-esque. I know they didn't win the pennant, but when you think about a team that was just left for dead, they hadn't scored a run in like 2 days, and there was no life in that team. But there is, we talked about this, that sometimes, someone from the baseball heavens just comes down and touches you on the forehead and said, it's your year, baby. Because the comebacks, and I know you hear all this crap and it gets thrown around, but the never die attitude, it applies to this team. I mean, that was something else.
Well, Howie Rose had one of the best radio calls I've heard of a clutch home run, especially in postseason, but even just regular season.
You know what? You know how critical I am? I've heard it a bunch of times to get excited, but he still needed to lay out. He was just too verbose at the end.
Yeah, but on radio, it's a little bit different to me. Also, it was really cool. I don't know if you saw this, but they played his call on the plane.
Yeah.
On the plane ride.
Everyone started cheering.
And he was going down the line, just like getting high fives from everybody, went up and thanked Pete Alonso. That was pretty cool. But I also think I know everyone's really hyped about Pete Alonso now, and you've been bringing it to the airwaves the last 3 months, Dan, and kudos to you. That home run was the nail in the coffin. He ain't coming to San Francisco.
Well, I think it also from just, again.
Why would he leave?
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of dollars and cents. And here's the thing, though. It's from the Giants' perspective, and we'll get into Buster Posey because I got some things to say.
Yeah, you do.
But just you tell me, how far along is Bryce Eldridge? How far out is he? Because if you're bringing Pete Alonso to be in a bridge, if Bryce Eldridge is on a fast track, you don't need Pete Alonso.
Well, you're not bringing in a player like Alonso to be a bridge. If you're going to sign him, it's going to be for, I would say, a Chapman period of time.
6 years.
5, 6 at least.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of players that you're looking for that can be staples of your, cornerstones of your franchise. And whether Eldridge can or can't, well, actually, I'd take that back. I think he can because he's been incredibly impressive in just one season. So, I don't want to put all my stock in one player, but I think the Giants have reason to believe that they can compete in the next couple of years. I'm a little bit skeptical as to the entire thing that they're trying to pull off at this point. But much like Cal, they're 10-point underdogs right now in the scope of Major League Baseball.
So just really quick to take a look at it from the other vantage point, that being the good folks from Wisconsin and the Milwaukee Brewer fans. And I usually, I look at the state. If I don't have a skin in the game, like I like Milwaukee. It's a blue-collar town. I like the people. It's just good, middle American. Give me a brats. I'm not from California. I'm not carb loading or watching my carbs.
What are you talking about? You had a wheat with only peanut butter sandwich 2 weeks ago, right before the show.
I couldn't live in Wisconsin. I'm just saying kudos to them who is sucking down the brats and beer and then washing it down with a pizza. Yeah, God bless you. I love Wisconsin. Like there's certain places I'm like, I can identify with them.
The cheese curds, Dan. The cheese curds.
Meanwhile, if it's Texas, I could give a rip about you. I hope you lose every game by 10 runs or 10 touchdowns. But Wisconsin, no, I like it.
We'll take their gas prices.
But I'll take New York in this. And my goodness, the shots of the crowd with that going into the ninth inning with a 3-0 lead, and the Mets had no pulse, and they were just sensing a celebration, and they were on their feet for every pitch and just randomly cheering. They were smelling Philadelphia and moving on to a divisional series. And they were all standing as one, ready for a celebration. And that's the other side of the coin. Just to see their hearts ripped out was painful. But that's all part of it, man.
Well, that's also apropos for Milwaukee. I mean, this is a team that is, I feel like, been the butt of a lot of playoff jokes as of late. But that was their first win, game 2, in like the last 10 tries. I think the last big wild card game that they played in, which actually sprung the Washington Nationals World Series run, was the one-game wild card in 2019. And I remember Trent Grisham diving or not catching a ball off the bat of Juan Soto. It was like a bases-clearing error that ended up giving the Nationals the win. They go on to beat the Astros in the World Series. So who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of a miracle Mets run because the Milwaukee Brewers seem to be at the center of it all.
By the way, Alonso knew he got that. Like the minute you can hear him just scream. Like he knew. He was probably the only guy he knew that he squared it up. And this is underrated. And I hope this comes back because guys are trying to get so creative with their celebrations, especially in baseball. All he did when he hit first base, and I like to do this from time to time, especially when Cease puts together an amazing meal, just simply give me the chef's kiss. A chef's kiss, baby.
That was really good.
Oh, that was awesome.
Well, the man is built to hit home runs, and he's done it enough times that he knows. By the way, I know with all due respect to Ken Griffey Jr. or whoever else you put in this category, Pete Alonso's the best home run derby hitter I've ever seen.
Well, that's the knock on him. So I got buddies.
Post-derby?
I got buddies in New York who were just vilifying him before that home run. I had to hang up on a buddy. He's like, that's all he does. Get the All-Star game or home run derby. We need you now. We need you now. Where are you? You can't hit. I'm done with Alonso. I'm done with Alonso. And, of course, the next day, he's like, yeah, baby, Alonso.
Alonso's back, baby.
I mean, they were out on Pete Alonso because they would hammer him with, that's all you do.
Now the Metropolitans are going to win the World Series.
OMG, baby. OMG. All right. Speaking of which, I want to continue with the baseball talk. OMG. Buster Posey is the new president of baseball ops here in San Francisco. Ev, I don't know your take on things. I'm assuming that locally the vibe is pretty positive. We all love Buster Posey. Guess again. I'm going to rip the guy when we continue on 95.7 The Game. It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan Devone on a gorgeous Saturday. Temperature is supposed to creep back into, I want to say, the 80s. I mean, right now it's just absolutely, I was swimming, watching the sun come up, just perfect swimming conditions. They call it slack. When there's no ebb meaning the current's going out, or flood meaning the current's coming in. Today's one of those rare slack days.
You know, I think this might be the first Saturday where I was actually up before you were. And not because I was out later than, you know, by the time you got up, but because I was actually up at like the crack ass of dawn, or before dawn, in fact, because I was out in, as you can see on YouTube, in bear territory.
You know it. You tell the story. There you go.
You tell the whole damn world.
Right. Thank you very much.
This is bear territory.
We're going to keep an eye on Ed. We'll check in with him. It's kind of like a telethon to see whether he can keep it going all day. I want to know, what's the over and under? You think he's going to peter out?
What's the longest bender you've been on?
I would say back in the day,
like 36 hours.
College, I could go a good, UCLA came to town once.
You're in Tucson?
And I was in Tucson, and it was an afternoon game, which they typically don't do because Tucson in the fall gets pretty hot, right? This is September, so you're talking really hot. And it was
no kidding.
It was a 12 o'clock kick to accommodate ABC. And I remember, so we started cocktailing, I'm going to say about 8, and then you have the game, and then you're drinking during the game, and then after the game, you have a big barbecue and a party. I want to say I went probably a good 12 hours 8-8 before I died.
You guys made it to Sonora and back?
Nice reference to the desert. Thank you very much.
That's Mexico.
Oh, that's right. There's Sonora, Arizona, and there's Sonora, Mexico. And there's also
I was talking about the opposite side.
There's also a Moss Beach, apparently, that neither one of us are familiar with. We're going to learn exactly where it is, a lot more about it as we go and check in with Ray.
Is that up north, Ray?
Ray, where the hell are you? Ray, are you there? Can we have Ray?
Ray, what's up, man?
I just wanted to chime in what everybody else has practically said, that Shanahan is taking the heart out of the team right now. Ayuk came up bad hard for Shanahan by being a good player to an excellent player, top of the league, and now Shanahan got it in his head that he embarrassed him, so to speak, and so he's been holding him down and he's messing with his head, and that's why Ayuk is messing up. And one step further, had they used Ayuk more in the Super Bowl, we would have won that game. But he used them enough to screw it up.
You a Stanford guy, Ray?
Yeah, Ray, what the hell show are you listening to? We haven't talked about the Niners yet. Hey, before we get into we'll do a little Ayuk just for you, Ray. Can you tell me a little about Moss Beach and exactly where you are?
It's a great, beautiful little town on the other side of the slide area. I can't think of it now.
Like Half Moon Bay?
Pacifica or by on the other side of Half Moon Bay, rather.
Oh, okay.
And it's a beautiful little town, coastal, quiet, beautiful. And most everybody there is a 49er fan, as a matter of fact. But anyway, Shanahan he's everybody says genius. I don't know about, he's good and great and everything, but Walsh was the only genius I've ever heard of. And it's been uphill since then. But anyway,
hey, Ray, really,
God bless Ayuk.
Ray, don't go. Are you near Mavericks?
Yes, I'm about a mile away from there.
Do you ever watch the tournaments in Mavericks? We're talking about one of the most, when it goes off, which is usually about this time of the year, I want to say.
The Borders?
It's one of the, it's a surf spot. It's a destination spot for everybody who's sponsored that surfs professionally around the world when they're going off. And it's one of the most dangerous surf spots in the world. Am I right, Ray?
Oh, my God, it's a monster. I'm not a surfer, so I don't want to say too much, but just from seeing the film, it's just one of the killer waves, so to speak. And people do it because they're awesome, and honestly, the only reason why I haven't gone is because I've tried to go, but the traffic and the parking and blah, blah, blah. But, it's worth seeing for sure.
Hey, Ray, piece of advice, because I love you. It's a beautiful Saturday. You live on Moss Beach. The hell with Brandon Ayuk and his red shorts, huh? Why don't you just enjoy the day?
Don't get me going on that one, man. and that's another tricky thing. Maybe Ayuk should have known better, but that's part of this head game that Shanahan is causing.
All right, thank you so much, Ray. Well, just for
I'm
Ray,
going to start wearing the wrong color shorts to this show. I mean, if it really ticks you off that much, Dan, I don't want to group you in with Ray. By the way, if Ray is a Stanford supporter, not the day. But I do need to get down to Moss Beach because Mavericks is... Dude, so is it because of the way that...
It's the break.
It extends, that it creates the massive swells?
I don't know what creates the swell, but I know the break. I want to say it's a shore break. It's really, really dangerous. And it's a strong tide. There's a guy by the name of Mark Fu who was a champion surfer out in Hawaii. And so when these things go off, right... You get 48 hours, right? Everybody knows that there's surf spots that around the world that this time of the year, they're just waiting. And so you could be a champion surfer, a sponsored surfer, one of the best in South Africa. You could be on the other continent. And then literally you'll get a beep, you'll get a call, you'll get a notification that you have 48 hours because Mavericks is going off. They'll catch flights and then they'll be here within that time frame. So Mark Fu, who was a legendary surfer out in Honolulu, Hawaii, back in the day,
Pipeline
gets a notification.
Waimea?
Thank you very much. Holly boy, you're doing well. You get a notification from Mark Fu that it's happening out in Mavericks. He's here within 12 hours, and then less than 24 hours later, broke his neck and was dead. And that happens frequently out in Mavericks. It's dangerous. Yeah, it's scary. It's
that story came to skidding Holt.
I didn't mean to go there. It's almost like Ray all of a sudden just talking 49ers, and I'm not exactly sure what show he was listening to.
R.I.P. Master Fu. That was interesting. I look over at Cam Williams, producer extraordinaire behind the glass, and as soon as we come on, we're wondering where the hell Moss Beach is. He starts digging in on the Niners, and Cam just throws his hands up like, where did this come from?
I don't know. Do you want to help? You want to help Ray out? Do you have anything you want to add to Brandon? We're going to get into the Niners later in the show.
Like, get off him, man.
All right.
First of all, he's not going anywhere. The dude's got a dead cap hit bigger than this entire station.
Yeah, the Devontae Adams thing. Please stop with that.
Also, I find it fascinating real fast that everybody is obsessed with Devontae Adams when he's a bigger diva than Brandon Ayuk is. This guy is asking out of his own team, which, by the way, is 2-2, the same record as the Niners. They got playoff aspirations, I hope. I don't know. I don't really get it. Like, whether you like Brandon Ayuk or not, I hate to break it to you. He's going to be here for a while.
I like the Antonio Pierce part of this whole equation. So Antonio Pierce, this went viral that someone picked up a story that Devontae Adams tweeted wanted out of Las Vegas, and then Antonio Pierce gave a thumbs up.
I think it was an Instagram post of someone, proposing essentially a trade or, I don't know, something about Devontae Adams leaving, and he liked the picture.
And your head coach endorses it.
First of all, we can't even stop head coaches from being on social media now. We got Ayuk and all these scrubbers and youngsters. Antonio Pierce, be better.
Yeah. Well, he's not. And the Raiders suck again, which is just...
No, they'll be all right.
What do you mean they'll be all right?
No, they're 2-2 on the same record as the Niners, Dan.
You're gonna bet on Mr. Minshew this week? I mean,
he'll pull a rabbit out of the hat. Although, of course, as always, we'll have our locks of the week coming up in the last hour if I remember to do it. The Raiders will not be on that list.
Who do the Raiders have? Oh, they're
on the road in Denver.
That's right. Well, I don't know.
Bo Nix stinks too.
Bo Nix is terrible. They just got lucky against the Jets. And by the way, I'm grinning, loving everything that's going on out there in New York with the Jets.
I thought you had them going to the Super Bowl.
No, I have never been a Jets fan. No, that week one against the Niners, I just knew that it was an emotional game in which the Niners blew them out. But anyways, all right, we'll stay with baseball for a little bit. That's typical, like we're at 45 minutes in the show.
Call back, Ray, and get us on something else.
I have no idea where the hell we're going. And the caller, if you want to talk about cricket, we're here for you, right?
And we're not talking about Dan's ex.
Thank you very much.
We're not talking about Dan's ex.
All right. Let's get into some Buster Posey. So I hit you with the text yesterday, which apparently you don't read.
What are you talking about? No,
casually go through them. So I'm like, hey, man, we got to get into Posey. I said something to the effect
First of all, it's once a blue moon.
First of all, here, I'm going to read to you what it is that I said. So I'm going to dig it up on my phone. I'm going verbatim here to my man, Ev. So I hit him with
I did respond to you.
You did respond.
In timely fashion.
So I said, I leave for a week and Posey is head of baseball ops. Are you out your damn mind? And then he comes in today and is like, I thought you were in on Posey. I'm like, did you not read the text? What part of are you out your damn mind thinks that I'm endorsing Buster Posey as the new president of baseball ops?
Well, it was somewhat of an ambivalent tone, Dan. And you are someone that doesn't necessarily predict things. Like, you don't go out on a limb and say, in 2 years, this guy's going to be yada, yada, yada. So the fact that you have such a strong opinion about Posey took me, which is why, in all caps, I responded, can't wait. Because I got some things that I got to say, and it actually sounds like we're on the same side.
Go ahead.
No. You texted me first and asked me if I was out of my damn mind. And yes, on occasion, I am out of my gourd. But I will let you have the first go, the first swing, sir.
I will. Okay, I will. I'll start this with gentle.
Don't backpedal.
No. I'll be kind initially, and I'll probably warm up here and then start screaming at the heavens in a matter of moments. I get it. I like Buster Posey as much as anybody else. The dude is a winner. I like the way he's wired. I always have. I love his interviews. The fact that he gives you nothing. The fact that he's boring because he's not playing the game, right? He's not feeding the beast. He's not giving you crap. That's just who he is. The idea that someone like that is going to be effective as the president of baseball ops, maybe it happens. I hope it happens because I like good people to succeed, and I'm with everybody else. I like Buster Posey, but you got to be kidding me that if you think that's the guy. I could be wrong because I don't know him that well when it comes to this side of the ledger, but typically that job description, the reason why it goes to academics like that of Farhan or going back in the day, the Cashmans and the Theo Epsteins is because it is a nerd's job these days. And there is so much more to it than just walking through the halls and saying I'm Buster Posey and having that it factor. It's about dealing with HR. It's about dealing with your entire minor league system. It's about dealing with payroll. It's about putting together an analytics team. It's about being 10 to 12 hours in an office. And to hire a guy with no experience, just looking at it within that realm exclusively, he's unqualified, man. I don't care the fact that he can catch a good game, that he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, that he's Buster Posey. It does not translate to being successful at that particular job. If he wants to be the assistant to the GM, if he wants to be a consultant, if he wants to be a figurehead, yes, I like the idea. I think he'd be smart imparting his advice when it comes to getting free agents and or sitting down and going toe-to-toe, if you want to believe Andrew Bagley. He was the guy that got Chapman to re-sign with San Francisco in a limited capacity, but the head of baseball ops, that's biting off too much, my man.
So I personally think that this is fascinating. I do not know if there is a comp for what the Giants are trying to pull off because, and there are former players in front offices. Like, for example, Chris Young just built the Texas Rangers into a World Series champion, and I believe he'd only been either the general manager or the president of baseball ops for a couple of seasons. And the Rangers were not a team that by any means was a perennial playoff contender before he got there. I think also right now, Craig Breslow in Boston, he's the, CEO of baseball. I don't think they call it president of baseball ops, but he's a former pitcher. He had also spent time previously working in front offices, so he's got a little bit of experience. Sam Fuld is another outfielder. I believe he's high up in the Phillies organization, but I don't believe he's the president because that would be Dave Dombrowski's role. There are players that have gone into executive roles that have been successful and have been successful at the highest level. You look at George Brett, who I think is still the VP of baseball ops in Kansas City. Nolan Ryan became actually the team president for the Texas Rangers. Those would be the two players that have taken over their own teams that they played for and have turned them into competitors. The Giants right now are in need of a facelift. And the best facelift around, by far, bar none, unequivocally, is Buster Posey. But where you lose me is when it comes to baseball. Because I think that Buster Posey would be far more fit to be a manager or work as a coach or even keep his place on the board, which he hasn't relinquished, by the way. He's still technically on the board of owners and also acting as the president of baseball ops, which indicates to me, Dan, that this is more of a title as opposed to a job description. They are using him to replace what previously could not be spun into a positive light, which was Farhan Zaidi. It was an unsalvageable situation with Farhan. They had to do something, and I completely agree with moving on from him, and I think you do too. And in fact, we championed for it throughout the season. But Buster Posey, as a day-to-day, 12 hours a day guy, ain't going to happen. There's no chance he would take this job if that's what it required from him. Now, what I'm very curious to see is how he goes about hiring, who he brings in to help him. And to be honest, the GM under him is probably going to be the guy that's doing everything that you're talking about that he won't because he's got 4 kids. I don't think he would take the job in the first place if he had to do that. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy to me. But what he does believe in is the San Francisco Giants brand. And he believes and loves the game of baseball. So I love the fact that the Giants have taken him in and turned him into basically the public figure that Farhan Zaidi could never be. When it comes to baseball, though, I am very skeptical because I don't know how you all of a sudden reform this organization with someone that has literally never done that before and, oh, by the way, was in a jersey 3 years ago.
Speaking of which, you want to know what his best role would be with the San Francisco Giants? Is to take off the suit, put on a uniform, and you can hit cleanup on that baseball team. We could use you. But as far as the head of baseball ops, again,
he's only 37.
If you're going to outsource, to your point, you're right. I'm with you. He has got to get it right because he's going to insulate himself, and he's got to get everybody in line. He's got to get he cannot miss on his GM. But if you're outsourcing everything, because typically the head of baseball ops like that of Farhan wants to be able to oversee everything. You want your input on everything. And if you're outsourcing all of these positions, well then, why are you the head of baseball ops? The guys that usually succeed at this typically right now, I'll give you a perfect example. Scott Harris, your guy, the guy who revolutionized and changed the Detroit Tigers. He's a former GM of the San Francisco Giants, went to Detroit. He's the guy, and I think we'd all agree, as you laid out last week, that might be the envy of just about every Major League Baseball team. Young, players under team control, and good. They got their future in front of them. The guy that changed all of that is Scott Harris. Scott Harris was in San Francisco as a GM. He's the head of baseball operations in Detroit. Why do I pick him out? Because he is the typical guy that gets these jobs and does the sort of about face, and you pointed him and saying, thank you very much for changing the culture here in Detroit. What's his background? And I do want to go here. He's a UCLA econ major. He went to the Columbia School of Business. That's where these guys come from. They're academics. You know who also is good? Is Mark Elias out in Baltimore. He's a Princeton mathematician. Chernoff went to Yale. These guys are all brainiacs. They're nerds. Farhan was a nerd. We just got the wrong nerd. That's who does this now because it's about analytics. It's about all the minutia that now caters to these sort of guys. And it all started with Brian Cashman back in the day. And that's been sort of the trend. Bringing in a guy who has never done it before and is a former player to now oversee all of this. You know, I have a friend who went in, he always tells a story. He said he went into Sandy Alderson's office when he was with the New York Mets, the former GM. Was he the head baseball ops?
He was the one who started Moneyball. Like, if you really want to go back to the roots of it, he hired Billy Beane, and then Billy Beane took over for him when he left.
And then he got the huge contract in New York. And so he said he went into his office once. And this friend of mine said that Sandy Alderson, on his entire office, was nothing but names of the players on his current roster of the New York Mets and everything about him, literally everything about this player. Not only that, he had every player's name and tendencies and all the algorithms of the guys in AAA. And it went right on to AA, to single A, Tidewater. He knew everything about every single player and all of this stuff that he has to pour through. And it's a job that literally took up 14 hours of his day. You've got to dive into that thing. And to think that Buster Posey, and just to see him, for all of us just to pass judgment on the fact that he was a great baseball player, he's a great guy, that it's going to translate to him being the head of baseball ops and being effective at it with inexperience, even if he hires the right guys. It is the biggest risk San Francisco has taken in recent memory, including the Farhan hire, and it may have set that franchise back some 10 years.
I'm not going to go as far as to say it set them back, and I guess this is where we deviate. But I do wonder how tapped in Buster Posey is. Like, I think Buster Posey is able to make the kinds of things happen like getting a Matt Chapman deal done. I would say that's already on him. From what we know, he was the man that made that deal come to fruition. It's also why I don't believe that Blake Snell is coming back, because if Buster Posey was a deal closer, I think he would have been able to get the Snell deal done around the same time or before the Chapman deal got done. So I don't have any issues with Posey being involved. And I think, quite frankly, that he's the guy to negotiate high leverage situations.
Let me
That's
ask
who you want in the room.
Why is that? Because I've heard this from a lot of people.
Because he commands respect in any room that he's in. From big name baseball players.
I get that. And I've heard that from actually some local host here at 95.7 The Game, and a lot of people, it seems to be a consensus, you want Buster Posey in the room because he commands that respect. I would disagree. That when it comes to dollars and cents, I don't really care that you played. It's, yeah, maybe initially, Buster Posey's sitting across from me. When it comes to contracts, Scott Boras is going to bottom line you regardless of who the hell you are. And the player doesn't really care. The player has no say. It's Boras that's going to get him his biggest deal, whether it's Boras or any other agent. So, yeah, hey, whoa, Buster, you look good in the suit. And my goodness, it's good to see you in a discussion like this. But this is what we want. And I don't care if you're Scott Boras. I don't care if you're Farhan. I don't care who the hell you are. This is our bottom line. And the idea that, it's Buster Posey, let me hedge off of that. I tell you what, instead of 6 years, we'll take 4. And instead of $30 million a year, we'll take 26. You want to know why? Because I respect the hell out of you. I don't see it.
No, but that's not the point, in my opinion. It's if there is a deal in a similar plane, right? Like if you're talking about dollars and cents, right? So let's say there's an even 5-year $100 million deal on the table from the Giants. And there's a similar deal from, I don't know, the Texas Rangers. I had zero faith before this year that player would choose the San Francisco Giants. And a big reason why is because the man pitching the Giants was Farhan Zaidi. Now, the man pitching that even deal is now Buster Posey. That significantly improves your odds of acquiring a free agent. Now, is that going to get you Juan Soto? No way in hell. Is that going to get you Blake Snell to even come back? I don't believe so. But your boy Willie Adames, I think the chances of him coming to San Francisco improve with Buster Posey selling the Giants as opposed to Zaidi. I know when we get back, because we have to take a break in a minute here, my concerns lie with Buster Posey's philosophical tendencies. Because while I also believe that he is better in the boardroom, I'm not sure that's what he really wants. I'm going to tell you why that is, but I'm not sure he can go out and get a big fish. I'm not really sure that's the way that he wants this Giants team to go, though. And that's where my bigger concern is.
All right, we're going to continue with the Buster Posey conference. Man, we went from Moss Beach and, this man cracking a beer at 4 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly
Irish coffee.
We're in the trees, and Buster Posey, who usually you would think would bring the room together, and we're just screaming at each other. We'll continue to talk about Buster Posey. Where's everybody at? You in on Buster? You think he could change things? I hope so, because I like Buster. Don't get it wrong. But we'll continue to talk about the former catcher now becoming the head of baseball ops for the San Francisco Giants. It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan Devone. It's Cam Williams here on 95.7 The Game. You know when Cam's back and he's got his hands on the dials, everything's just smooth, man. Our intro
Cam's
music
funky,
is
bro. I love it. In the best way. Not his odor. Unlike some people that work around here.
Cam, well, you're not referring to me, are you? Even though I do not use deodorant.
Yeah, I know. You smell like sea salt.
Beginning to smell, you know what stinks are those seals. Poof. Like, you see, what, two things that stink are a seal.
Back to seals.
Well, because, these big doughy-eyed things, and like you see them in the water, and you get close to them, and they open their mouth. It's like, whoa! Little breath mint here, buddy.
Well,
buddy boy.
It's like my brother's dog. It's like, dude, you could brush his teeth every once in a while. He's only got 3 of them.
And the other thing that stinks, I haven't done this, but a friend went on a safari, and they got close to lions. They're like, man, I bet we throw you a bar of soap there, Mr. Lion. With all that blood and just,
I was going to say, do people think that these animals and their hygiene is tailor-made? It's not like they're walking around thinking, oh, yeah, let me just go wash my rear parts today.
Also, Europeans have a tendency to be a little on the offensive side when it comes to hygiene. I think just collectively. Yes, I'm indicting an entire... And Australians. We're the cleanest country in the world. We're like sort of obsessive about the 3 shot. Well, I know. I mean,
have you looked outside? We're in the heart of San Francisco. God love this city. Ricky Pearsall got shot 2 blocks away from here, Dan.
What does that got to do with being clean?
Well, I'm just saying there's a lot of, nefarious things going on in these parts.
I know, but yeah, I'm sure. Well, anyways, I'm just saying that we, aside from, a select few in these parts, just generally speaking.
It all has to do with attraction.
As our country, we are obsessive about soap and cleanliness. In Europe, you take a shower once a week and you're good.
Well, my not so thought out theory would just simply be because Americans are attracted to cleaner people. Europeans love that pungent, natural, kind of barbaric smell. I don't know. Maybe it's because they've been around for longer.
Europeans are a little bit more real. It's just like, they don't put on the airs, but put on the dog, as they like to say. There's not, like, they pierce through typically when you're having a conversation with a European or somebody from another country. There's not a lot of, it's a beautiful weather today. There's not a lot of, what is it?
Well, they're generally more comfortable in their own skin.
Passive aggressive.
They aren't as material. They're not as caked up. I feel like I don't see a lot of European women as much as American women wearing, a lot of makeup and whatnot.
Yeah, and personality-wise,
natural.
There's not a lot of filter. You don't have to go through the passive aggressive was the word I was looking for. A lot of this should have, just fluff. They're very sort of poignant. They get to the point. And so I think sort of like, your hygiene and taking care of yourself, like, come on, man, really? How much makeup, how much hairspray, how many showers do I need to take? This isn't a facade. This is who I am. Like, let's stop with the puppet show.
Well, yeah, just because it has the same climate doesn't mean the Swiss Alps are like people in Minnesota.
By the way, you know what our climate is very, very similar to?
Well, it's changing quite a bit. I don't know if you noticed. It's like 90 degrees and has been this entire week.
Well, we always get the Indian summer, so this is typical.
It hasn't been this hot, I was reading, since the 80s.
Is that right?
Yeah. We're moving in the right direction.
So we're very Mediterranean-esque. Like if you go to a Mediterranean coastal city, this is the way it feels. It's San Francisco, basically. It's just
with more humidity, no?
Well, I wouldn't call San Francisco humid.
No. I mean, like a Mediterranean region.
I mean, dude, I don't know.
Dude, yes, you do.
You're coming at me like I'm a scientist.
Well, and you were just in Ibiza over the summer,
throwing this stuff out there.
That touches water.
That's very similar.
No, in Rome it was pretty humid last summer.
Yeah, well,
that was their Indian summer.
Gets crazy. All right, so if we want to get back to Buster Posey, do you have any? Do you want to?
They're
close
done.
Things out. Well, here's the thing about. This is why I had some reservations about Buster Posey. So it always comes back to me in my career. I'm like one of those guys, like back in the day, like I keep, what do they say? I keep the yearbook open, always talking about glory days.
Well, we still don't know how old you actually are.
So here's the thing. When I used to do shows, Ev, one of the most difficult things, you'll find this out when you're doing post-game shows and you have to do it with former players. And I remember I should text him and get him on the line. There were a couple of players that I used to have to do it with. one of which was Kevin Gogan, who was an offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, used to protect Troy Aikman. He has multiple Super Bowl rings. Local shout-out, Sacred Heart High School here in San Francisco. Played at the University of Washington. And so Gogs and Chad Eaton, like every fall when I was working with, not even in Seattle, but working with post-game players, we're doing a post-game show with former football players. And you have meetings, right? There are some things that you got to do where you have to come to these editorial meetings during the week because you got to work with producers, you got to work with directors, you got to know times, you know, in and out. They got to fit you for things called IFBs. And I am telling you, these are guys, just think about it. They've done one thing their whole life. Going back to AAU, certainly in high school, and then in college where they were the best, and then in the NFL. As I like to say, you get to a point where you grow accustomed to people putting food in your mouth. They open doors for you. That's your life. They've never had a job, the quote-unquote 8 to 5. And I remember dealing with these guys, and I would say, you just got to be at this meeting. And they're like, you know what, Dan, that's the most painful hour and a half, 2 hours of my week, of my life. I can't sit there and listen to some producer talk about stuff I don't even care about. And I'm like, you have to be there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the gig. My news director, general manager is going to fire you. You got to be at these things. Just play the game for an hour and a half. Christ, I got to do it every day. And my point is they just could not be in that formal setting. And I would look at them while I would be at the meeting in this huge conference room, and their knees are going 100 miles an hour. They're looking at everything out the window. They can't focus because they've never, and it dawned on me, I'm like, you guys have never had to do this. You've never, ever had to do this. And I remember once Chad Eaton wanted me to fire a producer because of the way he sat. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we can't have a guy who's sitting with his legs folded in a chair. Like, what's he doing? I'm like, that's your takeaway from the meeting? How about understanding, you know, what the producers are trying to get across from our highest rated show here? He's like, no, the guy's sitting with his legs folded. Like, come on, he can't work with us.
You didn't like the yogi?
Apparently. But my point in all of this is, and I don't think Buster's like this, and you pointed out there could be outliers like the Nolan Ryans of the world. Although I would say the transformation of the Rangers wasn't necessarily accredited to him. Would that be an accurate?
No. Well, I was just going to say, those are examples of people that have done it. But
yeah.
There's a reason why there's only two. You know, also, he wasn't involved, from my understanding, in the day-to-day aspect of things. Like, he was a team president and probably dealt with the large, big-picture decisions. But Nolan Ryan is not helping groom Jurickson Profar through the minors, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that it's really difficult adjustment just from leaving one thing you've done your whole life as a baseball player. And now it's not just being part of the executive team, but now being the head of baseball ops. Like, man, you've just signed up for an office gig that is 10 to 14 hours a day where you're overseeing everything. Now, you can outsource and hire people, but still, it's a huge, huge undertaking. And it doesn't matter if it's Buster Posey or anybody else that you hire for that job with no life experience. Just like anything else, it's a precarious hire, I think.
Well, I think it's risky. This is where I am with you, Dan, because a lot of people, whether it's been on this station, around the area, even around the country in some places, are just talking about Buster Posey taking this position, this post, like there's nothing at stake. Like this could not go wrong in any way, shape, or form. I completely disagree. Well, I think that Buster Posey is one of the brightest baseball minds in the country. I do think that this is risky for not just him, but also for the Giants, because you just played your ace. You just played your best hand. And if that's not good enough, then where do you go from here? So that's from the Giants' standpoint, because he is the ultimate facelift for a Farhan era that has produced one postseason in 6. That's not good. But if Buster Posey doesn't produce results, I'm not really sure what card you have left to play after that. From Posey's perspective, it's risky because if it doesn't go well, I do think his legacy in a way is at stake, not as a player, not as a World Series champion, but as a face of Giants baseball. Chris Mullin, for example, was somebody that took over with the Golden State Warriors. I don't know if people look at him unfavorably as a player, but people don't remember that era of Warriors basketball very fondly because there was some decisions that he made that didn't work out for the Warriors. That same thing could happen with Buster Posey, and that is a possibility. So everyone walking around like there's zero risk involved in this decision and it's 100% forward with the San Francisco Giants, I would just caution you because of the reasons you just mentioned. Lack of experience, a lack of help, and one thing that I think is going to make Posey's hiring difficult for the other positions is the fact that he occupies the one post that everybody wants. If Buster Posey was an owner or on the board, remains on the board, and is able to weigh in on who he would like to become the next baseball, president of baseball ops, that's one thing. But now anybody looking for a move or to join the Giants front office, it's GM and down. So you're going to have to hire probably an AGM from another organization. So you're not looking at the number ones or number twos and trying to pry those from other teams' front offices. You're trying to pry number 3 or number 4 execs and banking on those guys stepping in and becoming something great. I just think that's really risky, and I don't think that people are giving that enough thought, quite frankly.
Is Patella out, the current GM? I mean,
they're going to probably move him to a different spot. It sounds like he'll still be a part of the organization publicly, but privately, maybe not as much.
Because it's very different. I think that for the GM under Buster Posey, as opposed to the general manager under Farhan, because Farhan basically wore all the hats.
Well, that's the other part of it, too, is you're hiring a GM. It sounds like to me. Now, Posey might do all the day-to-day stuff. I just personally don't believe that that's what they brought him in to do. Nor is he, quite frankly, capable. Like, he doesn't have a resume to me that screams he's able to do that. And learning on the job also wouldn't give me a lot of confidence in the first year or two going very well. But that's neither here nor there. If he hires a GM to step in and do all the things that he needs, then you're hiring someone to do another man's job, basically.
Well, yeah.
Or pick up the slack. And who would want to do that unless you're paying an obscene amount of money? And even then, this is the other problem with it, too. If Posey hires a GM to take over some of the roles that we generally associate with the president of baseball ops, well, then that person is also going to take the fall. Because, at least in the short term, I don't think there's anybody that would blame Buster Posey, for example, if they didn't make the postseason next year. Or at least I wouldn't, because it's year one. But since Posey is now the face and he is the quote-unquote savior, whoever he brings in is going to be the guy that I think is going to take all the blame if this doesn't go very well.
Oh, you're going to be the fall guy. But most GMs are. And most GMs don't obviously have the notoriety of a Buster Posey. So I think
usually the president, like the number one, takes the fall. Farhan takes the fall. Chaim Bloom in Boston takes the fall. Brian Cashman in New York takes the fall. But Buster Posey right now, for the first few years, his hands are clean. And I don't think there's anybody that's going to put, a lot of pressure on him to basically do what Farhan couldn't.
Again, it just comes down to a guy with no experience. And I could see him being, part of the Giants organization, certainly, as he has been. And I didn't realize that he had, as much pull as he did until I found out that he was in on those meetings with re-signing Matt Chapman. But to take over again, I got to throw the title out there because I think a lot of people are too casual about it. It's the head of baseball operations, which means you oversee everything. From the minor leagues to the analytics team. Hell, you got to deal with payroll. You got to deal with the HR. You got to be Matt Nahagian, man. You know how difficult it is to do what it is that Matt does. And we just think of Matt Nahagian, our boss here at 95.7 The Game, as a guy, hey, Matt, let's talk about the schedule, talk about contract salaries. He's got to do that. He's got to deal with sales. He's got to deal with HR. He's got to deal with the guys upstairs. He's got to deal with Odyssey out in New York or wherever. There are so many fires that you're putting out. And everybody just sees it through their personal scope. And I think, again, when you're talking about what it is that Buster Posey has signed up to do and what the Giants have agreed to hire him to do is there's somebody that I think I asked for something that I'm regretting here. What the Giants are asking him to do is doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's just a recipe for everything to go wrong.
Look, I'm not going to rob him of the possibility that this could work. I just wonder how long that's going to take and why all of a sudden things would change. Because I do agree with you, and even Posey said it, you can't stray away from analytics. And moving into Buster Posey from Farhan Zaidi would, to me, be seen as just an anti-analytical move. Farhan's associated with it. That's what he does. He crunches numbers. Posey is probably much more of a field guy, although he has an innate understanding of what stats are important to him. Where I also think there's a disconnect is, we talked about Posey helping in the boardroom and closing deals. I don't really think that's what he wants to do. I don't think he wants to build a club around free agents. His teams that created a dynasty in this city were homegrown, large in part. I think that's what he wants to do. And so either that's going to take some time, or B, it's not going to work at all. Because I think that Buster Posey is very familiar with Bryce Eldridge, probably Carson Wisenhunt, maybe Reggie Crawford, all these top flight guys from recent years. But has Buster Posey really dug into Guillermo Maldonado? Has
only you have.
He really dug into Bo Davidson? Now, maybe. These are all top 30 prospects for the Giants, but those aren't just the dudes that you're relying upon. I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald was never a top 30 prospect for the Giants, and he now might be your starting shortstop come next year. So I just wonder where Buster Posey is going to put his fingerprints, because I think he's much more of a build from within type of dude. But that also means that you got to be locked in 12 hours a day and you got to make all these choices.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
And I don't think he's that kind of person. I don't think he wanted to take the job and just immediately go from, basically having a couple of, business meetings to get Chapman in and maybe get this guy in and try and convince these players to actually, we need you to go to Scottsdale this winter for the fall Arizona League and tell us who you really think is going to pop next year. Like, I don't think he's doing that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mentioned before how I would deal with former athletes who would come and do the post-game show, and they became stars. And one of them happens to be on the line.
No
and he
way
is one
in
of
hell.
my favorite people in the world. Let me just give the background for the people out here in San Francisco and the Bay Area.
Your boy just threw you under the bus.
He's a former Cleveland Brown. Made a name for himself with the New England Patriots. And then, of course, signed a huge free agent deal with the Seattle Seahawks. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the one and only Chad Eaton, who joins us from who the hell knows? Where are you these days, Chad?
Oh, Double D. How are you, brother?
What's going on, my man? How are you?
I'm doing great, I'm living in San Antonio now.
All right. Are you still coaching, by the way?
No, done coaching. I went off grid for 5 years. I was out in the Mojave Desert with my wife, and we bought a bunch of land, and we might as well had about 1,000 acres because the nearest guy or neighbor to me was about 5 miles away.
So this is why Chad Eaton is why your name came up earlier today. So this Buster Posey, I don't know if you follow the San Francisco Giants, but he's a former player, and now he's become the head of baseball operations. My point in all of this, taking a former player and making him do something where he's got like an office job. And I said, I remember a guy named Chad Eaton. We would do these post-game shows. And all he had to do was show up to these editorial meetings like once a week and sit there for an hour. And I remember he would call me and say, Dan, I can't do it. He said, you understand, I've done one thing. I've played football my entire life. I've been the best in high school, the best at the collegiate level at Washington State. I have never in my life have I had to sit in an office with a bunch of turds like you and your boys and listen to you talk about times and producers and ins and outs. And I'll let you take the story from there. I mean, am I taking liberties here, or was that not your thought process as a former athlete now that literally had to sit in a room and come to a conventional meeting?
Well, I mean, you were right. I mean, you're right. I mean, but we also had we switched out producers, and we also had we had lame duck leadership. And so when you've been around great leadership, like with Belichick and Parcells and Pete Carroll and coaches like that, like Holmgren, And so you actually are engaged into the meeting and like, okay, I like this, whatever. We had that one producer that I told you this too. I go, men do not like fold their left leg underneath their body and they sit on it. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to take any guidance from this guy here? I'm like, holy crap. So yeah, I mean, but we have to do if you and I, what they should have done is let you and I just do the show.
Yeah. Well, when you go from playing with Willie McGinnis to working with Dan Devone, I mean, it's like.
No, we had a blast.
An upgrade. Hey, hey, that's an upgrade. I'll tell you what, Dan Devone, man, I'll tell you something. I watch these guys on TV and things like that, and I'll talk to my wife or some of my friends. I'm like, I mean, he's money. I mean, not only is he good looking, not only is he charismatic, but this guy here, he right off the cuff. You guys know this. You guys work with him. Right off the cuff, this guy can just nail it every time.
Oh, Chad, my man, you're a beautiful person. So really quick, before we got to get to a break. So we used to work with me, you, Kevin Gogan, and there was a guy named Hugh Millen, for those of you who don't know, a former quarterback. And Hugh Millen he would break down his crap in the morning. This guy was like so into it. Meanwhile, Kevin Gogan was out in a van, stoned. Like he was just had the windows up, tinted. And then Chad Eaton would be sleeping one off. I'd give him we had this little office for the cameraman, and I'm like, go sit in there. I'll never forget my director, 5 minutes to every show, going, Dan, where is everybody? I need air checks. I'm like, I'll go get him. I had to go out to the parking lot, go get Kevin. Gogan would come out of his van. It was like a scene out of Cheech and Chong.
The Mystery Machine.
There was this plume of smoke that followed him. I'm like, all right, let's go.
But you have to realize, Gogan is 6'7", 320 pounds. You're like going, I mean, he's the abominable snowman or Lurch. You're like, and now he's stoned. Great. Hope he doesn't fall down.
But you know what's funny, Chad, is the reason why you were good and Gogan is that you knew television. I don't even know if you guys had watched I know you watched the game, but you knew television, and we were the highest rated show, and it was because of you guys, man. You were entertaining, and you know it.
Well, it was a lot of fun. And you know what? And now that, you're back up running, and I'm back in civilization, maybe we can get something going.
Let's do it. Chad Eaton, ladies and gentlemen. Chad, I'll hit you on a text. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Chad.
And let's stay in touch.
All right,
we'll continue.
Thanks, guys.
We'll continue here. I told you, man. He wanted me to get rid of this guy because he was sitting on a chair differently.
Did you put the bad signal out?
I hit because I was like,
how'd that happen?
I hadn't thought about Chad Eaton, so I just literally texted him saying, "What are you doing? Hit me up." Or I gave him the number. I was like, "Call me." And so
888-957-9570. I guess the phone lines are open, ladies and gentlemen.
Speaking of which, before we get to the break, just give me Mitch really quick for 30 seconds. Mitch, we're up against. What do you got, Mitch?
Oh.
Hey, Mitch.
Oh, sorry. I'm sleeping. I'm lucky I'm not working anymore. How you guys doing? You say the Dodgers have a lot of pressure. They're all banged up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's San Diego and Kansas City. And got to watch out for tomorrow's game. Murray can beat, I think, anything. He's a very exciting quarterback. But we saw a lot of offensive weapons. I like a chance. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Mitch.
Oh, thanks, Mitch.
I tell you what, from Chad Eaton to Mitch in Jersey, man, we have got you covered. All right, we'll be back here on 95.7 The Games. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone. We'll talk a little Buster Posey. We'll get into baseball, but I also want to talk about, as Mitch just laid out, let's do Niners. We continue after this. You want to hear one of the best names in baseball?
Let's go. Huh?
One of the best names in baseball?
Well, I just told you about Guillermo Maldonado.
Yeah, but I don't know who the hell that is. Oh.
Giants farmhand.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right.
Not farmhand.
Kodai Senga. Every team needs a Kodai Senga.
Dude, all right.
I know.
No. Mets are throwing him to the Wolves.
Well, what else are they going to do? That's what happens when you get stretched. And it's basically an opener game. He'll go 3 innings.
Well, yeah, 'cause he hasn't pitched in like 3 months. No. Just throw 80% ghost splitters. Look, in a 5-game series, game 1 is certainly more important than a 7-game series. But, yeah, the Mets are trying to pull something off that I just don't really see.
Is Wheeler going tonight?
Yeah. It is pretty cool that we do get division matchups in both of the, I think in 3 of the 4 ALDSs, because you got Tigers Guardians, AL Central, you get Padres Dodgers, NL West, and then Phillies Mets, AL East, NL East.
Listen, if the Yankees, and I know they're good storylines.
They're done.
If the Yankees don't go to the World Series.
They won't.
There is a highway right now. You got the Guardians, the Royals, and the Tigers standing in your way. They're a third of your payroll combined. If you don't go to the World Series this year, heads have got to roll. There are no excuses. I know people like the cute Tiger story and the Royals with their 106 losses last year and the Guardians. You got the Astros out of the way. You got all the big boys out of the way. If you don't go to that World Series, New York Yankees, there's something to, there's going to be a price to be paid, a severe one.
We often get this reminder every time the calendar turns to October that baseball is a different sport in the playoffs. For the same reason that Aaron Judge will flame out spectacularly is the same reason that Shohei Ohtani is going to get introduced to a new brand and a new audience who are not going to like what they see because, well, I don't really know if he's going to fall flat on his face. I just kind of hope he does because he plays for the Dodgers. But it's a different sport. Like what you did in the regular season, Aaron Judge hitting 58 home runs or whatever it was, does not matter anymore. And I also just don't think the Yankees, they might be the best team on paper, but that doesn't matter when you get to October. So, and for whatever reason, it feels like teams that have the higher seed, that get basically a week off, they're at a disadvantage. So it's almost like you being the better team through 162 actually hurts you.
You're sounding like a Dodger apologist right now.
Oh, no, I'm talking like a man who supports the Padres.
Ah. Well,
I hope the Dodgers lose. F them. Just like I hope, just like I hope Miami stubs their toe tonight in Berkeley.
By the way, what's the over and under that Ev makes? I'm going to say your cutoff is at 4 o'clock before you begin to taper down.
AM? Or
no, I'm talking about 4 o'clock this afternoon where Ev's going to need a nap. Ev, once again, just to reiterate, if you're just joining us, is saying that he's going to power through. Now, he is a young man. Keep in mind, he was up at 4 in the morning walking the dog. And then while it was still dark out, he made his way to the University of California, the campus, and where was it at again?
Memorial Glade
for game day. So Pat McAfee and the Kirk Herbstreit, the entire crew were there. They taped from 6 to 9. He was there beginning at 4 o'clock, obviously on the air with me from 9 to 12. He's going to go to the gym after this, and then he's going to power through right up until kickoff until 7 o'clock. I'm saying, Cam, the over and under we're setting at 5 o'clock, that he's going to need it. He's not going to make it to 5 o'clock. He's going to peter out at some point and have to crash.
Please.
But much like a lot of kids, although you're not strewn on a lawn somewhere out in the East Bay, thankfully,
no.
You will.
Well, not yet.
That power nap of a half an hour is going to help you, obviously, get to where it is that you want to go, which is kickoff tonight at 7:30.
Well, it's just the same way you avoid a hangover.
So you're just going to go straight through.
You just keep drinking. So I do think that I'll probably have to at some point grab a little, I don't know if I'll sleep standing up. What I'll probably do is when I get on BART at 24th Street, it's like a 35, 40-minute ride between 24th and downtown Berkeley. Perfect amount of time to knock out. And the beauty is if I wake up in Richmond or somewhere, it's only 2 stops back. So it's great.
All right. Well, I'm saying that you can't even sleep. Well, it's not fair. It's either you power through.
I'll sleep with one eye open. Does that count?
And then what happens after the game? You're not going post game, are you?
Well, I got to do the pregame show with Lorenzo Neal tomorrow morning
wow.
in Santa Clara. I think that starts at 11 a.m. right here on 95.7 The Game. But of course I'm going out. Especially, dude, if Cal wins tonight, you kidding me?
All right.
I'm tearing up downtown Berkeley.
Again,
Just look for me on Telegraph.
when it comes to Cal football, get in the damn huddle. All right, Wilcox, this idea of going tempo, it's over. Chip Kelly wrote the book 10 years ago. Move on. Get innovative and do something. How about getting into a huddle and just making sure you don't jump off sides? How's that?
Well, the amount of stars that are on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm not talking about star players. I mean literal stars, like 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars. Not a lot of them. I think Jaden Ott, their running back, is the only 4-star that they've recruited under Justin Wilcox, or at least that they have on the offensive side of the football right now. I could be wrong about that, but may the Ottoman Empire reign for 100 years, Dan. That's really what we're looking forward to tonight.
And I like the Carlos Mendoza story. His career is never going to go beyond Cal, but I like the guy. I don't
keep calling him Carlos.
What's his first name?
Vincent.
No, it's not.
Vincent Mendoza for Cal?
I think he was an entourage.
You're right.
What's Mendoza's first name?
Fernando.
That's it. Fernando. Yes. Fernando.
He's a good-looking kid.
He's a great kid. He's just infectious smile. I just like him. I like that kid. I just think that they got to. I watch Cal football, man. It's probably the one thing that I have a rooting interest because.
Do you mind if I ask why?
My sisters went to school there.
Okay.
And so when you're at that young, impressionable age, like I went to games and I was like, oh wow. And then I just followed Pulowski and I've followed. I could tell you every one of their quarterbacks going back the last 30 years. I don't go all the way back to Barkowski, but, Cal football is just something that, I'm one of those people that deals with this pain every year. And I can tell you, watching them play, going no huddle, some teams are equipped to do that. Watch Miami. Miami's going to go no huddle today. But Miami has the athletes.
Well, they got the Heisman front runner right now.
And they go, and it's effective. Cal, it's just like, when they go that quickly, they're prone to mistakes. Either a penalty, which happens more often than not, which I thought was embarrassing against Florida State, or a turnover. So Wilcox, if you're listening, my man, there's nothing wrong with the huddle. Just slow it down. You don't have to be like everybody else. You're not cut out to do. You know how when you play against a team that's much better than you in basketball, you try, as they like to say, take the air out of the ball, meaning you're going to slow it down because they want to run. And back in the day in college basketball where you had no shot clock, or now it's like 45 seconds, you would burn that thing right down to the nub. That's what they need to do. You don't want to play Miami style and try and match them going no huddle for no huddle. It'll be 52-0 by half.
No. Absolutely not, because the Cal defense, as of course you were listening to Pat McAfee earlier today on College Game Day, will let you know that this is one of the highest turnover teams in the country.
Their DBs are good.
Cal's got one of the most interceptable groups in the country. So, but by the way, speaking of Cal quarterbacks, who is your favorite California Golden Bear signal caller?
Well, I want to say Aaron Rodgers, but
that's cheating.
Yeah, okay. I'll say Mike Pulowski.
By the way, he's only there for 2 years.
Mike Pulowski, the Polish rifle.
Dude, you're going back to the 90s.
The 90s, yeah. Well, growing up, I mean, you're like, okay, well, it's got to be over the last 10 years?
No. I'm just saying. It's like, who you like has nothing to do with when or why he played. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to go through Chase Garbers or Davis Webb or, I don't know, one of the more recent guys. Sam Jackson V.
Well, because none of those teams were good, though.
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys were, I don't know, allergic to the forward pass, but I don't know, probably... Like honestly, my favorite quarterback when I was a youth. No, it was Zach Maynard.
Oh, the left-hander.
Yeah, he had one eye closed and one eye open for Keenan Allen. It was incredible.
That was Keenan Allen's cousin.
Yeah, exactly. So he just threw him the ball every single play. It was great. The team wasn't very good, but
so funny to think Keenan Allen went to Cal.
Dude, they got a lot of big boys in the league. Well, they used to, at least.
Oh, no. Cal puts out guys. There's no doubt.
Yeah, but like actual legitimate NFL talents. Not just guys that go to the league.
No. Stars.
Like Stanford.
Stars in this league.
Yeah.
Cam Hayward? No.
Cameron Jordan.
That's it.
Yeah, but, Deshaun, Nnamdi, Keenan,
Well, they used to do-
obviously Goff, Aaron Rodgers, but
Oh yeah, I forgot. I do like the Goff story because Goff sort of revitalized. Although
I did fall in love with the Bear Raid. That's what they started to call it.
yeah, I was out on Sonny Dykes. I never liked Dykes. I mean, he was a good offensive mind, but the defenses were so terrible. And now it's just
Talking
the
about
opposite.
scoring 50 points.
Now it's just the opposite. Yeah, well, he had TCU.
He's still at TCU.
Yeah, but he had TCU and playing for the national championship. What was that, like 3 years ago? Remember that?
Yeah, until they got rolled.
They got smoked.
Yeah, but
that, I mean, he was all offense. And now you don't have your offense is okay, but your defense is good. It's because you got a defensive-minded guy in Wilcox, whose father, by the way, was a linebacker here for the San Francisco 49ers, and he comes from the University of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And now, your offense is struggling a bit. And it's just, I'm telling you.
Well, they've struggled for quite some time. I mean, it really, before Mendoza, they haven't had a dude who could throw the ball, it felt like, since 2020.
And Goff was fun to watch. Even though the team was still, I want to say, middling in the Pac-12, but they won a couple of bowl games in the Goff.
Yeah, they won a Kraft mac and cheese bowl or two, a Red Box bowl. I don't know. Yeah, those teams were right in the middle. I mean, Cal hasn't been a team that's, I guess, respected on the national level in some time. They've cracked the top 25, I think, a few times, but they've never been, a big boy like they were in the mid 2000s or early 2010s. I don't know, mid 2000s. But it was fun to see them get the national notice from College Game Day. It felt like, from a lot of people I was talking to, even some of the Miami fans who were there, everyone's familiar with them because of social media. And I also think that there is a little political involvement with ESPN having the ACC and televising it and wanting to promote, right now, I think they're their best team in Miami, who has reason to believe that they could maybe make a college football playoff run. But it's also a chance, the rest of the games, it's not like College Game Day hasn't been to the Swamp or hasn't been to, around the SEC. So it's a chance to put an area on the map that doesn't typically get a lot of love. And it was almost like they're promoting it. Like, I don't know if you remember back in the day, there used to be this slogan in Portland called Keep Portland Weird. I think they still adopt it or still have it. But it was almost like it was one of those kinds of things where it was, Berkeley is set up as like this quirky, hippie, tree-loving area, and we just want this whole show to be weird. And it was, but it was really entertaining in the process.
I think Cal football. Listen, I think there could be an upset tonight. I've seen Miami play 2 games this year. Yes, they're good, but they're beatable. They're very beatable. Virginia Tech, I mean, it was a bad call at the end. That game against Virginia Tech with a Hail Mary, if you know what it is that I'm talking about, one of the remarkable comebacks or remarkable endings to a football game that I've seen in college football in a long, long time, and they just got railed. It should have been a Virginia Tech win. But Cam Ward, the transfer from Washington State, he's good, but he ain't all that. You'll find out tonight.
He's pretty good.
At
least he was. I watched him more at Washington State. But.
You mark my words. After tonight's game, you're going to say, yeah, they were good, but Cal could have beat them, or Cal will beat them outright. I
think Cam Ward's going to be a first-round pick.
I wouldn't touch him.
Who would you touch?
I would not.
You like Shedeur, don't you?
I like Carson Beck. I like Shedeur. Travis Hunter's ridiculous. Travis Hunter's your Heisman. That dude is nuts.
Well, Heisman might be playing at Memorial tonight, but
Cam Ward is not a. He's not a.
Okay,
I'm not. He's not. If I can. I'm a GM. There's no way I'm touching that.
This
kid.
might be the only show that's going to talk college football for more than 15 minutes on the West Coast. That's at least in the Bay Area. But it's funny to me that everyone is super high on Shedeur Sanders. Dude, what do you think his teammates are going to do when he throws them under the bus when he gets to the NFL? Like the moment where he talks about a team, let's say he gets drafted to Carolina and just gets obliterated, blindsided umpteen times a game, and walks to the podium and says, well, I mean, I had no time back there. What do you expect me to do? It's going to be like that scene in, in Longest Yard, where they're sitting in front of Adam Sandler after he throws the game, starts throwing the ball to the team. They come out the second half and just let the entire defensive line through like a turnstile.
Is that his nature? I don't know where you're going with this. Is that what he?
No. I'm just saying, like the characteristics or qualities of a leader, to me, are not one that is going to place blame everywhere else but himself. which is also what he does, despite having the largest NIL deal in the history of the sport.
He's got a lot of holes in his game too. But he's so prototypical for the way the game's played right now, with his ability to throw and run and be an athlete. But he needs a lot of work. But his teammate Travis Hunter, I don't know what he's going to play, whether he's a wideout or he's going to be a DB. But that dude is a crazy, crazy skilled athlete. All right, well, let's get into let's do a little Warriors before we get to the break, and maybe we continue it after the break. The one thing I want to know.
Mm-hmm. They play today, by the way, at 4 o'clock. It'll be right here on 95.7 The Game. The first preseason game in Hawaii, taking on the Clippers.
Honolulu, Hawaii.
I think I don't know where they're playing, but their camp has been in the North Shore.
Really?
Yeah.
North Shore?
Yeah, because it's more secluded.
Well, where the hell are they is there a gym in the North Shore?
I don't know. Oh, they're Hawaii BYU.
Oh, okay. That is on the other side. I wouldn't call that North Shore. Yeah. All right.
It's on the north side, right? Well, I don't know where Hawaii BYU is, but they're staying from my knowledge on the north side.
Got it. All right.
Turtle Cove?
Neil Everett?
Yeah, he actually went to my university for 2 years before transferring to Oregon. Played soccer at Willamette and then decided to kick rocks.
He used to do sports in Hawaii. It's where he started.
How's it,
brother? So he did sports in Hawaii, right? That's where the how's it comes from.
Yeah.
And he was also the sports information director for BYU UH.
Really?
Yes. And he did weekends. I remember he was so out on, and he was a guy that used to have literally have a cocktail under his desk at KGMB, the CBS affiliate in Honolulu, Hawaii. Let's turn things over to our weatherman. What's it going to be like today? Well, much like that in the last 364 days of the year. It's going to be 85 and partly cloudy. Back to you.
25% chance of rain.
All right.
Depending on the side of the island. You ever thought about doing television in Hawaii?
Well, I had an opportunity, yes. I mean, I actually started out there. So I did play-by-play after college for Chaminade University.
You did play-by-play for Chaminade?
Oh, yeah. Here come the Silver
Swords. You call the upset over Virginia?
No, come on, man.
No, I know you're not that old.
No, but I did, and then on the weekends I did with KGMB. I was the weekend, that's where I first got my feet wet before I went to Fresno. Actually, so Fresno was my first legitimate where I was a number one. But it started out in Hawaii right after college. And the problem with Hawaii is that you just don't have any professional teams. And so, it's
just the bows.
It's all about the bows. So you miss the opportunity. It's the University of Hawaii football team, which is never good. Which, by the way, they're probably tailgating as we speak. Nobody tailgates earlier than the University of Hawaii because they're so into food. And a lot of them, once the food's over, they leave. They don't go to the game.
I was going to say, when I woke up this morning, it was literally 1 a.m. in Hawaii. You got to backtrack. As far as tailgates go, there are some incredible ones across the country. The best, I would say, the most devoted tailgate that I've been to was actually at North Dakota State in Fargo.
Bisons?
The Bison, yeah, because it's -15.
Oh, that's nuts.
And people are still out there boozing and just getting after it. They have all these party buses, and they're basically adjacent to each other or connected because you don't want to go outside for too long because you're going to freeze your you-know-what's off. And so you just kind of hop between these buses that are all warm and lit, and they have these bars that they make inside these basically makeshift school buses. It's a beautiful scene before you all go into the Fargo Dome, and watch North Dakota State, who's a perennial powerhouse, just kick the crap out of whatever FCS team.
Well, and so I'm assuming it's good comfort food, obviously. That's the thing about Hawaii. My cousins
a lot of carbs.
My cousins would always say, hey, listen, this Hawaii, none of that cheese and cracker over here. Like they eat, like they got a pig on a spigot. They're just like, it's real. Like you sit down and you eat, and then you eat some more. You talk story, listen to a little music, and then you eat some more. Talk a little more story, and this goes on for like 6 hours.
Is that your pigeon?
That's it, brother.
Speaking of the Warriors, sorry to side.
Oh yeah, that's
sorry.
You know what I want to know from you? I want to continue the conversation.
Okay.
Here's the question of the day: who's their starting five?
Question of the day. Question of the year. I think. Well, last year it was close to 30 starting lineups. I think we might see something similar to this year. I don't know who they're starting. Well, I have an idea of who their starting lineup is going to be.
Give me one. Don't give me this. I have an idea.
No. I just find it funny because after practice yesterday, I think it was Curry, Pajemski, Hield, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis that did kind of like a post-camp scrimmage or practice, right? And so one of the questions to Kerr was, is that what your starting five is going to be? And he goes, the only thing I can tell you is that that absolutely will not be my starting five. So I don't know who it's going to be. If I had to guess, my five would be Curry. I think Kerr's going to start Pajemski. Whether it's the right decision or not, I think he's going to start. Wiggins, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis. No Kuminga in the starting lineup. I think that's who's going to be the opening night starting five.
Yeah, I'm with you. Although DeAnthony Melton is going to give, I think, Pajemski a run.
I think Melton will close, but I think I think they might have a starting lineup that has two, and on some nights, three guys that do not close, which is kind of strange.
I think Pajemski coming off the bench makes sense in a lot of ways because he's sort of that old soul that we always detail, and he's sort of a calming influence. He's not Chris Paul, but he has like. He can come into the game and he's like, you feel as though he knows,
he's a connector.
He can balance the floor. Yeah, he can connect people, but I think he's effective if he's your sixth or if he's the guy that's replacing Steph, those Steph minutes. I'd feel comfortable with that.
I think we also learned this summer that the Warriors are a not statistically driven team, but they do lean on metrics. And the best two-man combination for them last season was Curry and Pajemski. So whether it's as a starter or a bench player, I do think we're going to see a lot of those two because that's who Kerr believes plays the best together. And whoever plays the best alongside Steph is going to play. Like, I think Kerr hinted at this. Right now, there might be 4 starting spots open because Draymond, I think what they're going to try and do this year to keep him fresher is keep his minute total around 28 to 30 per game. I think we're going to see a lot of Kyle Anderson this year at the 4, whether it's off the bench or starting on some nights. But
I'm glad that you have Trace Jackson Davis at that 5 spot. He has got to start.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to start.
Oh, he has to.
Well, by process of elimination, they don't have anybody above 6 feet 8 inches outside of him and Looney. Who, by the way, Looney's looking like a small forward. You see him knock down a couple threes in practice?
Oh, no.
Dude, that form is looking...
Oh, no.
He's looking like the player that was compared to Kevin Durant coming out of high school.
Oh, speaking of Milwaukee and Wisconsin, I don't know. He's lost a lot of weight, apparently. Speaking of threes...
I also don't necessarily... If he's playing center, why is he losing weight?
Here's the thing.
He's already undersized.
Is that you're speaking of threes, Jonathan Kuminga has got to take a step in that direction. Like, to me, that's whether he can play the 3 or the 4, I know that's a big discussion. He's most effective at the 3. And if you're going to play the 3, which is why I think Kerr is hesitant to put him there, it's because you got to shoot the 3. It's got to be in your bag. Like in today's NBA, you've got to be able to shoot a 3 if you want to play at the 3 spot, which I know he's more comfortable there.
Well, he also has to be able to move the ball if he's playing alongside Wiggins because both of them are pretty ball dominant. I don't know. The thing that I find fascinating, I'll tell you on the other side, because there's something that Kerr has talked about in training camp and that dates back to the end of last year, which I find really interesting. I don't know if it's good or bad necessarily, but I want to pick your brain about it.
All right. We'll do that and much more, and we continue after this. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone on a Saturday morning. We've hit 11 o'clock. Game day is here, or was here in the Bay Area. My man Evan Giddings was up literally at 4 o'clock, walked the dog, and told the dog, find your own way home. I got to get out to Cal, where, of course, he and the rest of, what would you say? How many people were there today for game day?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean,
A couple thousand?
I would say so. Yeah, it was pretty packed. So I got there pretty early. I got there about, 4:45 or 5. And so when I was walking up, people were coming in, and I would say it felt like, several hundred. But then, and so I was able to get close enough to I was like right near the DJ on the left side. There's a big screen in the college game day setup. And so I could see the set. The set's far away from the actual people because there's like this inner pit that they made. But then at about, I would say 7 o'clock, when a couple of my friends were rolling in, because really they just wanted to see the kick field goal, and then they wanted to see Marshawn come out to do the guest picking at about 8:45, but I had to leave before them. And when I went to meet them, I realized how many people there actually were. And that's where it felt like there was thousands, because it was elbow to elbow trying to get to the entrance. And actually, Cal did a really good job. I don't think that College Game Day usually sets up these hydration stations, but because people are out partying all night or breaking through barricades or doing whatever it is that 18 to 22-year-olds do nowadays, they had set up water stations, coffee stations, and were actually handing out food that I believe the university paid for. That wasn't from College Game Day. So they actually did a pretty good job at making sure that kids either got their hydration on the way out, or that the elder folk like me and people that were drinking coffee and not beer in the morning could also get whatever we needed coming in before we start boozing.
And I was always a big fan of the Cal band.
Yeah, they were on the university library steps. So they would have been, if you're looking straight on at the set or on television, they would have been towards the left side.
Got it. That sounds an amazing environment. So anyways, Ev started his day at game day as Cal gets ready for the University of Miami. He's going to power through after the show here. He's going to go to the gym, continue drinking pregame, and then out.
Well, start drinking. I haven't had a sip of alcohol yet, at least today.
But there were people drinking this morning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there was crushed Pacificos. And, dude, I saw, God, what did this guy have?
This is at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, it looked like all right, this is how you know that you have an issue. If you're drinking alcohol out of a plastic bottle, not a metal bottle, but a plastic bottle.
Is this an environmental concern, or what?
No. It just means it's very cheap. It's a really cheap. It was like a plastic bottle of I would assume, I don't know, vodka or something. But we used to be able to buy those for like $8 at a corner store back in college. And number one, I'm glad that they're still around. But number two, it means, dude, you are down bad, brother. If you're sipping $8 vodka at 5 in the morning.
But doesn't everyone get a pass because it's college? I mean, we can't be passing judgment on these poor kids. It's college.
I just want to know what your liver's made of. It's 5 a.m. I mean, usually there's nothing wrong with drinking $8 vodka, but usually it's at about 10 or 11. It's what you drink before you go to the bars where you actually have to start paying money. But on the back end, dude.
So you're assuming he was up all night?
Well, I'd hope. That's what you're kickstarting your day with. I don't know. Have you ever? What's the weirdest thing you ever mixed caffeine with? I mean, well, I guess you wouldn't even have like a
Red Bull.
A Red Bull vodka you start your day with.
I mean, well, that's one of the functions of a Red Bull, right? Is to kick you in the ass.
Yeah, but that's what I'm going to have when I drive back there because I've been awake for now several hours. I got to keep myself going.
God, actually, now that I think about it, all those refined sugars I put in my body.
Big jungle juice guy. Yeah, now your body's a temple, right? Yeah.
Was there any kombucha?
Probably. I didn't see any, to be honest.
I mean, it brings back, listen, it's that time, right? It's that rite of passage. Poor kids are, especially at Cal. Has game day ever, I want to say it's never been to the farm.
No, it's been to the farm. Well, not to the farm. It's been to, you mean Stanford?
Yeah.
Maybe to Stanford. I'm honestly not sure, but it never been to Cal football. They had college game day or college live, whatever the basketball version is called. Because Reese Davis was talking about his experience back in, I think it was on one of the Mike Montgomery teams. But anyways, they've been to the Haas Pavilion, but they've never been to.
What are they doing during breaks? Do they entertain the crowd? Is McAfee doing anything when the game day crew tosses to a break?
McAfee's definitely the most interactive of the group. Herbstreit was, going down the line and slapping hands. Saban wanted no part. Howard was pretty cool. He tossed a few things into the crowd. But I'm going to be honest, after the first half, because I was locked in and I was pretty close for the first hour, so I was listening, I was watching, I was dialed in. And then once I went up to, up towards the watchtower to meet a couple of my boys, it became hard to see exactly what they were doing on the set. But they were throwing stuff into the crowd between the breaks. They had actually these 3 or 4 different setups. So if you're watching on television, when they pan to like not the picks, but they went to, let's say, the interview with Chris the Ball. Well, that was on a different part of the set. It was a little lower and off to the right. And then there was even a further setup that I think they did a lot of the rest of the games around the country and their, analysis or whatever. By the way, Nick Saban's hottest take of the day was that the wind in Nebraska was going to impact the game because special teams were key. Like, the guy had absolutely nothing to say about any single football game. And I just thought it was hilarious that probably the most intelligent mind when it comes to football, the most brilliant mind on the panel, was the one dude who had nothing to say about actual football games.
If I wanted to be in the front row where I could be right next to Saban and company, what time would have I had to get there?
That's a good question.
Or did I spend the night there?
You probably spent the night, but also because they had broke down barricades around midnight, you might have had to be there before then. Usually people will camp out and then they open up the pit, as they call it. They opened up the pit at 3:30. So you probably had to be there before then. But last night, because students just started flooding things, I don't know, maybe 11:30. If you're lucky, maybe 2 a.m. because all the drunkies had to either got sent to the tank or they kind of fizzled away. But probably 2 a.m.
Let me ask you this. What is your dream job? If there's somebody that has a job on television or radio or play-by-play where you're like, I aspire to be that person. I'll tell you where I'm going with this, because I've always, when I was younger and coming up, there were two jobs where I'm like, they were both television-based. I'm like, that's when you know you've made it. That does not get any better than that. And that was when Chris Fowler was doing Game Day. Now it's Reese Davis. Mm-hmm. It's the host of Game Day. And secondly was Anthony Bourdain, traveling around the world and just, drinking and eating. And
I'll still run back some No Reservations. I mean, it's just a great show.
Absolutely. Don't get me going, man. I'll shed a tear the fact that dude isn't with us anymore.
Yeah. I think for me, not him specifically, but we're just talking about the job, like the gig. I think Dave Fleming has a pretty sweet setup because
you're a play-by-play guy. It's in your blood.
But in the summer, he is the voice of a team, so he gets to represent an actual club in the Giants, but does both television and radio, which I think would be the best of both worlds. And literally during the game,
he's contracted with ESPN television play-by-play.
And he does college football and basketball. So he gets to do everything. He has a job in all 3 seasons, all 3 major American seasons, and he gets to do TV and radio. And he doesn't have to just be a national voice. He can also be a local voice. So he gets to do literally everything under the sun as a play-by-play broadcaster.
By the way, I thought maybe we could just step around this today, but since we sort of went down this road.
Don't bring up Brady.
I have to.
Oh, boy. I'm not going to lie. I didn't listen because I was at the game.
He's got the game this week. He's got the game tomorrow.
I also won't be listening then because I'll be in the press box. So I might go back and listen just for you.
Well, you can DVR the thing.
Is DVR still a thing? Damn, can we please check on that?
So here's the
TiVo next.
You know why you don't like him?
Who?
Why I don't like him is that
I love him.
Come on, you're just trying to push my buttons.
Well, you don't have many feathers to ruffle, but
so Tom Brady is bad. It's a waste of money. And here's why he's bad. It's not only he's getting the timing down a little bit better, the cadence. He's sort of getting in and out. Not as bad as he was in week 1. But now it's about content. I listened to him do the entire game. I was out in New York, and he had, what was the game of the week? It was Baltimore and Dallas. And he tells you absolutely nothing. Like the one thing you would think that Tom Brady's going to give you, and the reason why you hired him is like, oh, well, I'm going to see the game through Tom Brady's eyes. And he doesn't provide that. Like he cannot, what he told me repeatedly is Derrick Henry, boy, when he starts going downhill, look out. Like in Derrick Henry, man, he gets a crease. You don't want to be on that back seven trying to tackle him. Derrick Henry's a beast. He repeated, like, yeah, I kind of knew that.
No, nothing gets by you, Tom.
And you know who's, so, and then I was watching the Niner game, and Mark Sanchez had the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Sanchez isn't his number one, but he's good. He's much better than Tom Brady, further along Tom Brady. And the one thing that these quarterbacks are able to do, and when I was doing that, I was talking about, Chad Eaton called, one of the things I enjoyed doing was watching, when I was doing a post-game show, was watching a game with a quarterback. Because you and I will watch a game, and then a quarterback will say, did you see what happened, why that guy was open? And then they replay it for you, like, oh my God, I had no idea all this other stuff was going on. I just saw the quarterback get into a 5-step drop and throw a quick slant, and he tells you exactly why it all worked. And there was a play where Sanchez showed you the maturity of Jordan Mason, why Jordan Mason is a good running back. He broke it down in a replay. It was really quick. And he talked about how a defensive end got pressure, and Jordan Mason recognizes pressure on a play that was designed to go to the outside and around this defensive end. But because the defensive end had beaten his man, Jordan, and it was very subtle, that Jordan Mason quickly pivoted and turned it up inside and made something out of nothing, got like a 5 or 6 yard gain. And it was so insightful. You'll never get that from Brady. Brady doesn't have the capability yet, or I don't know if he ever will, of showing you things as to why a play was successful or not successful.
You know what I find funny about this is that I do believe in this.
We should get this sponsored every week.
Brady Watch?
Yeah.
The Brady Bunch with Evan Giddings and Dan Devone.
Exactly.
The funny part to me is I think that Mark Sanchez is a good broadcaster of breaking stuff like that down because the game was really complicated for Mark Sanchez.
I'm not saying he was a good quarterback.
No. But I think that's why Brady is, at least for right now, not as insightful or detailed or explanatory as you'd like him to be, because the game is so simple.
Kind of like why Barry Bonds wasn't a good hitting instructor.
Yeah, well,
why can't you hit that pitch?
I mean, yeah, the ball's right here. Of course I'm going to turn on it. Meanwhile, the rest of us are like, how do you even get to that pitch? You're on top of the plate with a 32-inch bat. And for Tom Brady, well, yeah, just give it to my running back, and Corey Dillon's going downhill. This is a very simple job. It's really not that hard, and I have to do my job, and then we'll win the game. For Mark Sanchez, he's got to think about his footwork. He's got to think about where his running back's going. He's got to think about all these protections, and all these things are. I'm imagining he's just going through it. He has to go through so many more mental reps than Tom Brady does because it comes so naturally to Brady. So Brady's probably not even thinking about articulating a lot of these things because they're second nature to him. They're not things that he has to consider and explain to his teammates. Like he didn't sleep through a meeting. Oh, that reminds me. So we were talking to your boy, it was a Chad Eaton earlier. So you told the story about whether it was him or your other co-host sleeping through those producer meetings.
Yeah.
I heard a story that Belichick, or maybe it was Edelman, told about Matt Light, who I imagine would have been teammates with Eaton.
Yeah.
Never paid attention during a single meeting. He's an offensive lineman, so maybe his job is a bit easier and less complicated. Never paid attention whatsoever. And so he basically, like a freshman in Comms 101, would basically cheat off the guy next to him whenever he would get called on by Belichick, because Belichick would be like, hey, Light, which gap are you supposed to contain, I don't know, whoever on ABC play? And he goes, he just nudges the guy with his elbow. Says, what do I say? And he goes, C. C gap, Bill. He goes, oh, I know you're paying attention back there. I mean, so even during actual practices or during actual meetings, some NFL players still can't pay attention.
You mentioned Mark Sanchez. As bad as he was as a quarterback, that's the last time the Jets were good. They went to.
Isn't that weird?
Well, you know why? it just depends on who drafts you, right? Sanchez was never a very good quarterback, butt fumble and all. But he goes to Rex Ryan, who had a good defense. That's all it was defense, right? And he threw just enough.
And a good running game.
Good running game. And that was it. And this takes me back to Sam Darnold. Like, when we think about Sam Darnold going to the Jets and Adam Gase and company, and then going to Matt Rule, and even more confusing out there in Carolina, that it's where it is that you get drafted and who it is that's your coach. It's going to basically dictate where it is. And you look at Jaden Daniels. Hey, Cliff Kingsbury wasn't very good as a head coach at Arizona. He's a damn good offensive coordinator.
Well, I don't think a lot of people, though, believe that Washington would be a good situation. But they appear to be, at least offensively. Their defense can't stop anybody, and I think their offensive line is, made of paper towels, but he's got weapons. I think that's just a case of Jaden Daniels as a dude. Because I don't think that team's particularly talented, but he makes them look really good.
And Chicago wouldn't even interview him. They're like, nope.
Well, imagine what he might be doing with the Bears right now.
The Bears said, no, we're all in on Caleb. We don't even want to talk to Jaden. We won't even bring him in. Like that. Listen, I think the Caleb Williams is off to a slow start, but from what I've seen, I think he's going to be good. Who knows?
No, I also believe in Caleb Williams.
But I just think it's the arrogance of Chicago that I would just laugh if they got this wrong again.
Well, I also think it's interesting that Jaden Daniels is a guy that is drafted to a place with a more offensively geared situation or offensive-minded coach, Kingsbury, and what he worked with Mahomes. He worked, obviously, in Arizona with Kyler. He's been able to produce good numbers from his quarterbacks wherever he's been. But meanwhile, the Bears chose to retain a defensive-minded head coach, Matt Eberflus. And to be fair, their defense is very good. I don't think they've given up more than 20 points in the last, 7 games dating back to last year. But
how's that offensive
their
line?
Offense doesn't know what the hell it's doing. Yeah. I don't know if it's Waldron who's their OC there, but Caleb Williams is like, I don't know. If that guy needs a cheat sheet, dude.
That offensive line is ridiculous.
Meanwhile, Jaden Daniels can't even throw an incompletion.
So bad, that offensive line in Chicago. Are you in on Sam Darnold now?
No.
Oh, come on.
It's been 4 games.
More do you need to see? Did you see him against Green Bay?
I need to see 12 more games. 13 more games.
Where was everybody at after 4 games with Brock Purdy?
That was a little different. But I was also skeptical. Wait, well, hold on. I was skeptical of Brock Purdy. I'm not afraid to admit that. I don't think he's the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Well, he might be now.
Although it is funny to me how, the record is, 500, and they haven't looked as great as they've been with Purdy. He's never played better football. He's been incredible.
He's the reason they're 500.
Yeah, which is, I don't know if they'd be 500 with Sammy D right now.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's
they probably would.
That digit is going to be a 7 next year. If he continues to
7 figures, you mean?
No, the first number is going to be a 7.
What? $700 million?
70.
Oh.
Per.
Oh, AAV. Okay. I thought you were about to go Shohei Ohtani on me real fast.
You don't think he can get 70? He's going to reset the market.
He is going to reset the market, but I think it's going to be in the 6s. 70? Dude, that is a massive leap from where we are right now.
Look at the trajectory, though. I mean, it's...
Well, but it hasn't happened that fast, I don't think. The one thing that could get him to 70, I'll meet you halfway on this, is the fact that he has nobody else to compete with in his class. He's the only quarterback that is going to receive a big deal. I mean, you might see you might see a free agent sign for big money, but 2 years ago was Herbert, Lamar, Hurts, and Burrow in the same class.
Yeah.
This last offseason, it was Tua, Lawrence, and then Dak. Oh, and Jordan Love. But it's only Purdy. Yeah, he's the only guy that is, I think, up for an extension because C.J. Stroud would be the year after who's going to get paid a lot of money too. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure who else is going to be up for a big payday outside of Brock Purdy because nobody in his class is worth their salt.
I think I'm a perfect example of somebody that was skeptical of Brock Purdy and now has made the entire metamorphosis of now recognizing him as being a star, not a system quarterback, a star.
Is it because, you had that love for James Garoppolo?
Listen, my love for James Garoppolo was not because of him. It was just this. I just said he was a better quarterback than that of Trey Lance.
He's a better looking quarterback.
And he gave you the best opportunity to win. You know why I'm probably representative of a lot of people why I was out on Brock Purdy and still have a hard time swallowing the fact that he is a premier quarterback. He's not a system guy. This dude takes the top off, extends plays. He is a top tier QB. It's just because it's the optics, man. I don't like my quarterbacks to look like Case Keenum. I want my quarterbacks to be 6'4", and I want them to be guys that are like in the top 10 of their class coming out of college. I want them out of a big name college. Yes, I'm prejudiced that way. I want them to look like a QB. I want them to look like a guy who can make all the throws and is somebody that's walking through the airport and I'm like, that's our QB. Not what's Mullins' first name?
Nick
Mullins. I don't want, it takes a long time for me to come around with a guy who's 6 feet on a good day.
Well, I think exactly. I think it's also, there was no physical trait that just wows you. When I first saw him, he was just deadly accurate. Ball went to where it needed to go, and somehow he was able to avoid pressure. And I think over the course of time, we now realize there's a reason that those things just continued to happen, because he is a cerebral quarterback. He doesn't have the greatest arm, but he also knows himself and knows where the ball needs to go at a particular time. And he's also pretty quick. He's not straight line speed. He might not beat you in a 100-yard dash, but 10 yards, he has enough quickness to get around an end. He has enough quickness to get a few yards and scramble when he needs to. And he's smart enough to know when he needs to get down and not take a big hit. I think he just does everything well, but nothing outstanding. Outside of maybe everything between the ears, which is something that we don't see. So, I was skeptical of Purdy because of the eye test, but the eye test is also why now I'm in, because every time I watch him, he does pass the eye test.
Yeah.
And I think because we're now accustomed to seeing him do these things, which we previously felt would be, he would regress in, he just continues to do them.
Well, he's getting more confident.
Yeah.
And talent and confidence goes a long, long way.
I also think it's, look, some of it is certainly situation, but he's now making the most of this situation, which is definitely not the hand that he's typically been dealt. And I get, they're 2-2, and who knows, they might lose tomorrow. I don't think they will.
No.
But I think also Niners fans are getting introduced to what the reality of most NFL quarterbacks is, which is you could play great and you might still not win the game, because it's not just all about the quarterback. It is about your team. It is about how your defense plays. It is about your special teams not making catastrophic mistakes. And it's about guys other than the quarterback also being able to take care of the football. So, I'm not trying to make an excuse or prop Brock Purdy up and to say he's perfect, but he's played as well as almost any quarterback. He's played better maybe than your boy Sam Darnold in some cases.
Well, let's not get crazy.
Sam Darnold might be the MVP right now if we stop today.
No, listen, in all
Only
seriousness,
it was a 4-week award.
I've done the complete about face with this guy, and
that's big.
It's not only that. You know what? This dude's a gunslinger, man. Yeah. He's not just checking down. It's not that shallow cross that you see every 49er quarterback throw. This guy's going up top. Like, he wants to hit you with the home run. And I want to say he's been the most efficient quarterback downfield this year. This guy it's not about dinking and dunking donuts. This guy's, he's winding it up and letting her fly. He's for real. All right. We get to a break. We'll continue with the 49er talk, get you ready for the pregame show with Ev. That, of course, is coming up tomorrow. And, what time is the show tomorrow?
11. It'll be 11, 2 hours before the I think it's 125. The
That's
kick.
a remote, right? You're
Sorry,
doing it from-
105 kick between the Niners and the Cardinals. Yeah, we'll be on site at the Hilton Santa Clara. Feel free to stop by for the tailgate. It's going to be a hot one tomorrow, though, Dan.
All right. We'll continue talking about the San Francisco 49ers as we wrap up the show right after this. Welcome back to the final half hour. It's Evan Giddings. It's Dan Devone getting you ready for game day today. The University of California taking on the University of Miami. The game day crew was here, nationally televised. It'll all go off for Memorial tonight, Memorial Stadium. 7:30 is the kick. Evan will be there. Evan was there for the pregame ceremonies. Game day went off at 6 in the morning. Evan was there at like 5.
Dude.
He's trying to power through from 4 in the morning until right through kickoff and right through the end of the game. And then, of course, afterwards, he'll be closing the bars. And then it's the pregame show.
Yeah.
With O'Neal.
Well, you can catch me, I don't know, maybe Kip's pregame, postgame, perhaps at the Tap House. But it started today at 4, and I told the boss earlier this week, like I'm only doing this show on Saturday if it's with Devone and my man Cam Williams, because there's no way in hell that I'm driving to Berkeley at 5 a.m., a place that I hold dear to my heart, driving back to the city to do a 3-hour show with someone who doesn't want to talk about these experiences or give credence to California, Berkeley, and then drive back into Berkeley, get blitz for the majority of this football game, then go out, then do the pregame with Lorenzo Neal. There's only one group that I would do this 3-hour show with, and it is you two.
Oh,
so.
Cam.
Thank you, boys.
We apparently have to come up with a nickname for you. Is there
You won't? Okay, this is something we were actually talking about at the bar cafeteria yesterday, and it's the fact that the breaks sometimes are where the best content for shows come from. So what we talk about during the commercial breaks is automatically brought to air. Like nothing's off limits.
So when I was doing a show, and I remember there was a regional news director said, Dan, we're going to try something out that we want to go through all the networks, and it's going to be a sports show. But we want, sports and politics sort of shake hands. We want it to start with sports, but we want it to sort of branch into politics.
So a podcast?
And talk about, it was not a podcast, but it was going to be actually a show. They were going to shop around to all the networks, and they wanted me to host. And my agent set this thing up. And so there were all these, I forgot who it was. There were some sports stars, but there's some politically outspoken people. We were talking about, like a perfect example would have been, politics and sports obviously are pretty rich and has a strong, strong history.
By the way, there was a sign earlier today, because there's a bunch of signs that show up at College Game Day, and the best ones get on television.
Colin Kaepernick, I'm sorry.
I don't know if this one did, but it was Kamala Harris for Heisman.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty good.
Creative. Like Colin Kaepernick would be a perfect example. So anyways, my point in all this is that we would have we shot a couple of pilots. And so we would talk about sports, and then we would talk about how it morphed into politics and sort of topical things that are going on today. And the conversations were okay. We would go to a break, and then the conversation would continue, and it got so much more interesting. Like, that's where all the meat and potatoes were. And I finally told, because it was so obvious, that I told the news director, I said, you got to roll the camera during the break. We can edit this stuff out. All the stuff is happening when we go to a break. Is when people are letting their hair down and really getting outspoken about how they really thought about things. It was like the commercial break was the show, which should have been the show. But anyways.
Well, because you can just say whatever you want off the cuff, and you don't have to consider everything that goes into when this mic turns on and the red button comes on. Whatever comes out of your mouth, you don't get back.
But
during a commercial break, oh, damn, well, what the bleep was it?
But don't
I can't believe
those are the best sportscasters, are the ones that have that attitude, the Charles Barkleys of the world. Everybody else is trying to mind their P's and Q's. It's why when someone stands out like a Pat McAfee or a Charles Barkley, they're just giving you basically with the red lights on or off, I'm going to be me.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd like to think we're ourselves here on this show, but we're probably not as interesting as a Barkley or McAfee. I also think it takes some time to get comfortable with being not just yourself, but that open on air, with not stumbling, with being coherent, with having chemistry with your partner if you're co-hosting a show, but then also just the natural feeling, like speaking as if you would, at a bar or at the barbershop or at home. I don't know. I think some people are more naturally fit for that. like a Barkley is not a classically trained television host, so he just doesn't care.
Trained.
You know, I don't think McAfee really cares. Although he started doing stand-up after he finished as a punter, and so now that his NFL career is over, he's used to being on stage and being performative and entertaining, which is why I think he is absolutely perfect for the College Game Day show. Because, no offense to the rest of them, well, Reese Davis is a pro. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And his opening monologue, which I think he writes in scripts every single time, was beautiful about...
Who did an opening monologue?
Reese Davis. At the beginning of every College Game Day, he does an open, and he writes his script. Yeah, it's really nice.
Were you there for that?
Yeah.
Today? Okay.
Well, that was actually why I wanted to get there early, because I read this article about the way that he writes his opens. I think it was in the Times a couple of years ago. But he really sits there and like meticulously thinks about what he should include in his open that pays homage to the location, that of course touches on the two specific teams. If there's any, newsworthy things that are going on in the areas that he needs to incorporate. I don't know whether it's a geographical place that he needs to. Anyway, he ties in all these different things in like a minute open, and it's really well done. So
does
I was
it have
impressed.
serious overtones or?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
He also does it live, so it's not pre-taped. So I wanted to see him do it, and it was impressive.
No prompter?
I'm sure there's a prompter, but...
All right, so we still got to get you a nickname. We'll work on that. If anybody has a nickname for Evan Giddings, please either let us know via message or you can call in and
Pat McAfee doesn't use a teleprompter.
How about Peanut?
What?
Sorry, guys. I used to have a producer I called Peanut. He wanted a nickname, and I said, "Yeah, you're Peanut." It stuck. You're not a Peanut type.
Peanut. That sounds like a baseball player from the 1890s. And Peanut Giddings at the plate. And, well, as everyone...
Didn't you have a nickname when you were playing baseball?
One of my teammates...
Besides E6?
Easy, brother. That brings back too many memories. Hit 400 my senior season. The nickname that probably stuck with me the most was... I had a Hawaiian teammate in college who pronounced my last name Giddings.
Trust the Hawaiians.
And so he just started calling me Dangs.
I like it.
And Dangs stuck. So people call me Dangs if they really know me.
I like it.
I don't know.
Especially when it comes to one of your takes. Dang.
Yeah. So
dang, you crazy.
That could be something.
Dang. Drunk again?
Not yet. Okay. All right. First of all,
you took the points in Cal.
I feel like a lot of people that listen to the show with any frequency are getting the wrong idea about me. Okay, I take this 3 hours from 9 to noon with Dan Devone and on today, Cameron Williams, very seriously.
Of course you do.
So seriously that I woke up at 4 a.m. and was like, damn.
No, dang.
Dang. Yeah, thank you. I kind of want to stay in Berkeley. I was trying to figure out how I could do the show live actually from the Glade.
Yeah, we should have figured that out.
But the Wi-Fi wasn't very good, and I also got to go take the dog out.
Dang, you smoke a lot. Dang.
Not yet.
There he is. Evan Dang Giddings.
But
I
you
don't have that stick. But can we have that
sure.
So nicknames have to be a little bit organic. So it's going to be off the fans, or it's going to be somebody that's going to call in and refer to you as Evan Dang Giddings or Dang. Evan.
But yeah, you can't give yourself a nickname.
No, you can't.
Like Daryl the Guru Johnson did not give himself the nickname
How did that
Guru.
come about?
The great Pete Franklin, he used to call into his show. And
Pete Franklin from back in the day, the guy used to flush people?
Yes. And so Guru called in. I might butcher this.
Flush
so I apologize.
that bum. That was the best.
He said Guru gave some, I don't know, take or something. And he says, well, does this guy think he's a guru? Flush him. And then he would always call in as Guru from Union City.
Were you ever a caller into?
No, I swear to God, I have literally never called into a radio show in my life. I don't know what it's like. Have you?
No, I never have.
Have you thought about calling into, like I worked with this guy in Portland who, his name's Chad. He's still up in Portland. But he used to call into Jim Rome as Chad in Portland.
Those are ridiculous.
But he became known nationally as CIP, Chad in Portland. And I think that actually helped him get into the radio business.
I want to say if there was one person to take credit for the word or the terminology takes, I think that all sort of originated out of Jim Rome's show. And so Jim Rome's show back in the day, it's not like someone would call up and it's Robin out in Oakland or San Francisco and she'll just go off on why, Jordan Poole is so much better than I am, Dan, and you don't know what the hell you're talking about, or why the Warriors are going to do well or not do well. They would have a script that they would read, and everything was just sort of in that lexicon of Jim Rome, the way Jim Rome would talk. And it had that same sort of cadence, and it was so funny because it was so homogenous. Like every person would sound exactly like Jim Rome, and they would write it out. They literally would write this thing out and be like a couple of paragraphs. What I always wanted to see was after somebody was on Jim Rome's show and had this quote-unquote strong take, and as soon as Jim Rome said, all right, thanks, Joe, out in Union City, and once he's off the air, the look on Joe's face, like, yeah, I did well. Or like, what do you do now? Like, what's like, this is what that, it's everything is those 2 minutes.
I find it fascinating because I also never listened to sports talk radio as a kid. I read the newspaper, so I knew the local writers, but I never listened and called into talk radio. So when people bring up Pete Franklin or Ralph Barbieri, or we were talking about Gary Radnich earlier this week, I never listened to any of these guys. So it's funny that I work in radio now, but I don't, like, if you told me that I had someone's style, I probably wouldn't know who that person is.
Well, that's good. It's because you have your own style.
Well, I knew who Jim Rome was. I know who Colin Cowherd is, but I don't listen to their shows. And it's not because I'm lazy. I don't know. One thing that the one show that I did really fall in love with was the Le Batard show when I was in college. And one thing that Dan always said was to prepare for his show, he would never listen to anybody because he wouldn't want anybody else's opinions to infect his.
Sure.
Or you don't want to have the low-hanging fruit of basically copying someone else's opinion. You don't want to basically just plagiarize on air. So I feel like I read stuff and I try and I have my own opinions about things and then incorporate it, but I don't like, honestly, I don't like listening to a lot of other radio hosts.
He went off on Craig Carton. Do you know who Craig Carton is?
Yes.
Does the morning show on Fox. He's a former...
Didn't he go to prison?
Yeah. And Dan Le Batard went there in ridiculing because he had a strong take against Miami. That show's based out of South Florida. Dan Le Batard is from Miami. He's a Cuban man from the Miami area, very entrenched and identifies with South Florida and loves all the Miami teams. And so Craig Carton, who was part of Odyssey, he was with WFAN in New York, and now is gone full on television with Fox. And he had this take on Miami's done, and Miami just railed on Miami. And so Dan Le Batard went back at him. And I like Le Batard as well, but it's like, whoa, you needed to go there. And he talked about, weren't you in prison? Talked about what it is that he did to get to prison. Yeah. He's like, you're a felon. Like, whoa. Like, go back at him saying you're wrong about Miami. Stay within the context of the game or within the lines. But really, we got to go there?
No, sometimes you got to fight dirty. I think a lot of people make it personal with people's opinions. Like, I don't think I'm a great takesman. Like, my takesmanship is not where I believe it can be one day. Building a take around, Buster Posey being a failure or not going to be successful or Brandon Ayuk needed to be traded. I feel like things are not that black and white. But the one thing that I find it hard to do on air is to get personal because I know that I can't take it. Like if I get personal with you and then you dial it up to the 40th floor after I take it to the 20th and I get dropped off, I'm not going to be able to handle probably what you have to say to me. So the fact that Le Batard did that, I mean that, dude, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and it's so atypical from him because usually he's got, he's got a twinkle in his eye and he understands the game. But
yeah, he's one of the most, I think, lovable sports figures in the industry, in an industry of not a lot of lovable sports figures.
Speaking of lovable sports figures, before we get out of here, I just have to throw some love. And I know he was controversial, but any thoughts on Pete Rose? I know he's before you, but you being the old soul that you are, and especially when it comes to baseball, how much did you know about Pete Rose, or were you moved one way or the other with his passing this week?
Well, it sucks. I mean, it's another figure in the game that has passed in a year where it feels, I think partially because of social media and the internet, we're now more aware of every time a legend passes away. Yeah. And the one thing that I do hate is how quickly people have to eulogize this person in their totality, as opposed to allowing things to leak about their lives and experiences, and maybe an experience that someone has with them to kind of come out organically. I think the Pete Rose documentary, and I haven't watched all of it yet, doesn't frame him in the best light. And so it's unfortunate that he passes around the time or near a time where people have this idea of who Pete Rose is, because he's a complicated figure. As a baseball player, there's not many better. He not only was the hit king, but I think he played the most games. He had the most plate appearances, most at-bats, and he just was always available. But the first time that I learned about Pete Rose, honestly, was he was the guy that broke Ray Fosse's collarbone in an All-Star game. I thought he was a bastard. I think I'm allowed to say that on there. I thought he was that. So that was my first thought about Pete Rose.
Ruined Fosse's career, basically.
Exactly. And I love Ray Fosse because I grew up an Oakland A's fan. God rest his soul.
It was an all-star game.
Both of their souls. An all-star game, which we now know to be jokes. But he got put on this pedestal for being the guy that took the game seriously, that seriously. Yeah. And I thought that was a little overboard. So, Pete Rose is an amazing baseball player, a complicated figure. And honestly, I just hope he finds some peace in whatever comes after this life, because I think, and I've learned this from talking to a few athletes, that at some point, if you are the guy that just is the game is who you are, to be a Hall of Fame player but not be in the Hall of Fame has to eat at you every single day that you wake up. And I know it might not sound like a big deal to us because the Hall of Fame is just a jacket and just whatever. But I think to someone like Pete Rose, that really meant a lot to him, and is probably the only thing in his life that he didn't accomplish.
Yeah, I would say yes and no on that, and obviously only Pete could answer that. But I think someone mentioned this to me, and I think I may have heard this from Pete. The fact that he remained relevant was because he was so divisive, and the conversation which would divide the room as to whether he should be in the Hall of Fame or whether he should not kept his name relevant. And because of that, he made so much money through autograph signings, because everybody knew who Pete Rose was, because well after his career, people were still talking about him. So I know that financially, and he would do anything. You would see him, and I see him in Vegas all the time. Man.
Yeah, it'd sell his soul.
Yeah. He was, I don't know. I don't want to get into whether he was a good person, bad person. He was a big personality. And I have a fond appreciation for people who were, and he was funny. He used to go out of his way just to try and be funny. He was just he said something that I think you'd appreciate. He was actually pretty good when he talked baseball. He knew what was up. He wasn't somebody like A-Rod just telling you a bunch of crap.
Oh, yeah.
He said something that I felt really sort of, you might appreciate this. He's like, don't ever change your swing if you're in a slump.
Change where you are.
Yeah, do you hear this?
Yeah.
He's like, if it's a breaking ball, get up in the box, get back in the box. It's like, adjust where you are in proportion to the batting box and the pitcher. Don't change your swing. Your swing is the reason why you're here. Don't mess with that. Because once you do that, now you're really talking about a recovery that could take a lot longer.
But I also find that fascinating because
Did you happen to just Google that? Because I did as well this past week. Or are you familiar with that?
Well, I remember it vividly because I'd never heard it before. And it was on a Fox pregame show, and he was actually talking with A-Rod about that.
Okay.
Because A-Rod was like, hey, Pete, you're the hit king. The thing about Pete Rose also, which is interesting in regards to not changing anything about your approach, is he did everything. He played damn near every position. Yeah. He also was a switch hitter. So you would naturally think that someone that does all those different things has different approaches to a position or to his stance or which side of the plate that he's on. And in fact, no, it's actually very simple. There's just one little thing that you do at the plate, no matter which side you're hitting from.
I saw him this is why I love Pete. He was, you know what he was? He was the quintessential baseball player. If you took him out of the dugout where he was chewing and spitting and just hamming it up with the guys, he never fit. He never fit in society. He never knew how to do it. As a baseball player in a uniform, that's where he lived. That's where he should have belonged. And he just one of those people that just would crack me up because he was always always trying to be funny, and he would do it in a crass way, and he'd piss a lot of people off. He was 83 years old in the last interview. He died at age 83. So earlier this year, he was doing an interview. And someone said to him, they were talking baseball, and he said, someone said, hey, Pete, it was a baseball person, said, hey, Pete, if you came back to baseball today, what do you think you'd hit? And Pete said, I'd probably hit, I don't know, $195, maybe about 200. And so the guy said, oh, so the pitching's got that much better, Pete? And he said, no, you dumbass, I'm 83 years old. But yeah, no, he'll be missed. It's, and I don't want to, I know a lot of people still don't like the guy because of a lot of things.
Do you consider him, real fast, because I know that you worked in Seattle, do you consider him the hit king?
Oh, yeah.
Not Ichiro?
No. You got to do it in the majors. Well, do you put Ichiro at the top?
Well, I think what they both did is unbelievably impressive. I mean, Ichiro started at age 27 or 28, still had 3,000 hits. I mean, but Ichiro would be my version of Pete Rose because I'm younger. Like, I never saw Pete Rose play. He retired in 84.
Yeah, but I never saw Ichiro for those 7 years when he got all those hits in Japan. Like, I don't know who the hell he was facing.
No. But I'm just saying, like, to me, that's who I believe is the best pure hitter that I have ever seen. But Pete Rose was that before him for a longer period of time in the major leagues because he only had, I don't know, 10 of his 24 years, he had 200 or more hits. Like Shohei Ohtani didn't get 200 hits this year. It's hard to get 200 hits. He did it 10 times.
Really quick, who's your home run king? Who do you recognize?
God, you're going to make me do this with a minute left?
You said Barry Bonds?
It's Hank Aaron.
Wow.
Or sorry.
I'm going to get out of here. For those of you that want to just...
Aaron.
And he went out on an Evan, dang!
Barry Bonds is the best hitter I've ever seen in my life, but...
Dang, Giddings!
Hank Aaron he's the king.
Say it with me. Evan, dang! Hank Aaron?
Now that's a take.
Evan, dang! Giddings!
Oh, my God.
They're
going to ruin this.
It's getting obnoxious now. All right, my man. Good luck. Good luck powering through. Keep us updated on what's going on and whether you actually made it through pre-game, kickoff. It all started at 4 in the morning. You get the game tonight. And then afterwards, you'll be going hard. And then, of course, everybody will hear and see you tomorrow with Lorenzo Neal, the pregame show, which goes off at what time?
11 a.m. before 49ers and the Cardinals at 1:05.
Until then, for Evan Giddings and my man Cam, this is Dan Devone. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. So long.